Good evening and welcome to Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole meeting tonight, Monday, February 19th. First, there is a notice of public hearing of the Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole. Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Urbana, Illinois will hold a public hearing at 7 p.m. Monday, Friday 19th, 2024 in the council chambers of the Urbana City Building, 400 South Vine Street, Urbana, for the purpose of receiving public comment regarding the proposed vacation of street right-of-way, which consists of the portion of North Cottage Grove Avenue north of East Park Street. Persons with disabilities needing special services or accommodations for this hearing should contact City of Urbana's Americans with Disabilities Coordinator at 384-2466 or. So I'm calling this meeting to order. Would the city clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu.
Here.
Mr. Evans.
Here.
Ms. Hersey.
Here.
Ms. Colasetti. Ms. Bishop.
Here.
Ms. Wilkin.
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Is there any public input regarding the vacation of the street right-of-way, which consists of the portion of North Cottage Grove Avenue north of East Park Street? If you have any input, any public input, please come forward to the mic. And Tim has a presentation for us.
Not much, just a quick visual just for people to understand where we're talking about here. This is essentially on the west side of Ambucks Park, north of University, heading into Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District's northeast plant. There's a combination here of a street vacation and an alley vacation. UCSD reached out to us about vacating this right-of-way, which is primarily just used for them for their access drive. And at the same time, we had some long-standing alley vacation that was adjacent to it that we had an interest in vacating as well. So that's what we're here to see if anybody has public comments on. And then we, post public comments, we would bring this back for action in March.
I do have a question. Is that the street that goes from to the building of where you can pay your bill and stuff? Okay.
Yes.
Just so folks might understand and get a visual.
Yep.
Is there any public comment regarding the vacation of this street? Okay, not seeing any. This public hearing is adjourned, and we're moving on to the Committee of the Whole. Okay, I am calling to order now the City of Urbana Committee of the Whole meeting. Monday, February 19th, 2024, 7 p.m., actually 7:03. And calling to order the Committee of the Whole meeting. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Wu.
Here.
Mr. Evans.
Here.
Ms. Hersey.
Here.
Ms. Colasetti. Ms. Bishop.
Here.
Ms. Wilkin.
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Next, approval of minutes of previous meeting, December 4th, 2023, public hearing meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
It's moved by.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Mary Alice and seconded by Chandra. Is there any discussion? Okay. Can I hear aye or nay? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Are there any additions to the agenda? No additions to the agenda. Any presentations and input? If we're going to do presentations, I'd rather do them now. Okay. Those who want to do public input, could you please raise your hand so I can get a count? Any of it? And I also have Okay. Right now, we'll leave it at 5 minutes for public input. If you wish to have something to say, please step forward to the mic.
Hello? Yeah. Okay. My
And give us your name, please.
oh yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Hello, my name is Julie Watkins. I'm an Urbana resident since 1976. I want to thank everybody who has been making public comment. I'll be leaving because I'm afraid with large numbers of people, but I will listen to what everybody says on live stream. And I wanted to thank Council members Quisenberry and Wilkin for their words last week about a process for some kind of Gaza resolution. Yes, I would like a different method for this issue. I do have questions. I would like to ask about contradictions in previous public comment, both internal and between sides. I would like to discuss when people aren't being so emotional, but how can we stop being emotional when people are starving and children are dying from drinking dirty water, when refugees are being attacked? People in D.C. are all talking and planning, and everything seems to drag out when the people under threat with nothing can't wait. I can't not make a fuss, and this is the political space that I have. If Israel military makes a ground invasion on Rafah, I hope they don't do that. There can't be another forced march. Those people. I think the warning is for March 10th. Something has to happen. And Egypt is building a high wall in front of the border to make an area to contain everybody. They'll push 6 dehydrated, starving people on another march. And you know some of those people will drop dead in the push when people are already dying in the tents. And Congress passed billions more for bombs and weapons. These are U.S.-made weapons. They're dropping on refugee camps in Gaza. Politicians in D.C. call this Israel defending itself. Many people, including anti-war and hostage families in Israel, say Israel government choices are making the situation worse. The record of history shows violence making more violence, and that strengthens the warning that what they're doing just makes more of it. Some of the hostages that were freed last year during that pause, those people welcoming them, you're the reason we're back, because people in Israel were protesting that there had to be a ceasefire because you can't get the hostages without a ceasefire. And that's when the hostages came back. So I don't have a vote in Israel or with Hamas. My argument is with my government. DC shouldn't be going along with a bad plan. And I can't, it's hard to cooperate with being told business as usual when all this is happening. There are more communities than there are senators and Congress members beholden to war profiteering lobbyists, so we speak. And we're asking you to help us help lift our voices. So didn't Vietnam and Iraq teach us anything? I am joining many others in non-cooperation because there has been mass death and another ongoing and another mass death looming. Somehow between all of us, I hope that we can make it stop. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stav Ashur. I'm a citizen of Urbana. Last week, at the end of the meeting, a couple of council members, I think, maybe 3, maybe the mayor as well, I'm not entirely sure, have stated that, well, we've been coming here for a good few weeks now and talking at the city council, while it seems like we're actually having a debate within the community. And all of that was happening, and, you know, it's a heated debate, and people are really saying a lot of very emotional things. And I think that the city council was right when they said, listen, you can talk to one another. It seems like many people here agree that there should be a ceasefire, agree that a terrorist organization should not control Palestinian lives. The hostages held by a terrorist organization should go back to their homes. It seems like there's quite an agreement that all of this should happen. While I personally still do not think that the Urbana City Council has anything to do with that, I think, and many of my friends in the Jewish community also think, that it is time to propose a new resolution that many people can agree on, so that if the Urbana City Council finds it appropriate to vote on that, maybe there'll be less objections from the Urbana community. Maybe we can do that without being inflammatory and so on. And so last week, after the meeting, we've approached Ben Jocelyn, who is the author, or one of the authors maybe, of this proposition about the ceasefire. And he said that he's going to talk to the head of the CUJF, the Champaign-Urbana Jewish Federation, and also I think he might have met with Rabbi Allen of the Sinai Temple, but I don't know, I personally don't know of anything that has come out of it, and none of my friends do. So I would like to invite the city council and anyone else who might be listening to contact me personally. My email is stav.sh1@gmail.com. I'm going to repeat that for the recording. stav.sh1@gmail.com. Anyone from the city council or anyone else who might be listening can send me an email. We'll sit down, write a new resolution, a new proposition, a new thing we can bring before the council, so that this ordeal can stop dividing the community, can stop causing so much fear, so much, I feel like hatred is the only thing that's coming out of it. And so I've asked many of my friends, even some that are here, to not speak today, even though they're already here, just because I see no point in talking, pretending to talk to the council, but actually talking in front of the council, while actually having a debate between between two parts of the community. And so I think we should just have a new resolution, one that we can all agree on, because we all want the same things. We all want a ceasefire. We all want Palestinians to live a good life. We want the terrorist organization that's currently controlling their lives to be gone. We want the hostages to go back to their homes. We want the war to stop. We all want that. So please, I invite anyone from the city council or anyone else who might be listening to contact me. I might be a part of the team. I will maybe get other people from the Jewish community to be there instead of me. I think it's time to stop this charade, stop this whatever this is. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Lee DeVille. I've lived in the Champaign-Urbana area for 2 decades, most of that in Champaign. I'm also the president-elect of the Champaign-Urbana Jewish Federation, although to be clear, I'm speaking today on my own behalf. Something that's come up time and again in the previous weeks is the question of whether or not the Urbana City Council should be spending their time developing a foreign policy and making declarations about international affairs. Clearly, the supporters of the proposed resolution think it should, and many others think it should not. But this debate aside, we can certainly agree that it is not a natural or typical bit of business for this body, since to my knowledge it's only been done once before in the entire city's history. But in this debate about whether it is city council business to address the Israel-Palestinian conflict, we have lost sight of certain roles that clearly, inarguably, and inevitably fall to the Urbana City Council, as they would to any city council: legislative authority, representation, and community development. So for legislative authority, the City Council of Urbana has legislative authority, but only over the City of Urbana. This council could decide all sorts of details about how businesses operate in Urbana, zoning laws, operation of motor vehicles, things of that nature. This City Council does not have legislative authority in Gaza or in Israel, and it can't make anything happen there. Even the proponents of this resolution will concede that point. Their whole argument is we'll pass it and it'll send vibes up the chain. Representation. I will concede that there are a lot of Urbana residents who support this petition or something like it. But there is a very large group of Urbana citizens who strongly oppose this resolution as written, who are troubled by it, and who are afraid of, if not the resolution itself, then much of the language surrounding it, whether it's been in this room or on social media. There are many in the community who are forcefully telling the City Council not to pass this resolution. For the City Council to do so would be the exact opposite of acting as a representative body. Finally, community development. Here I'll make it simple. There's business before this City Council that's tearing this community apart. Just look around this room. Here are the things that have been said in this room week after week. It is not bringing people together, it's tearing us apart. It would be much more consonant with the mandate of this City Council to work on projects that will bring the people of Urbana together, and I'm asking the City Council to focus all of their energy in those directions. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Andrew Valentine. I'm here representing the skate community of Champaign-Urbana. Our friend Chris Evans, who sits alongside you, has been very supportive of our cause. However, he has told us we are going to be able to further present our case in January. It is now halfway through February. We are ready to present our case to explain in lengthy detail and would love to do so as soon as possible. The City of Urbana says they want to help at-risk youth. A safe space for skaters will be a crucial resource to keep at-risk youth occupied in a safe and healthy activity. Please hurry up with the date on our presentation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Robinson. I'm just kind of reiterating what Andrew Valentine just said. I'm here on behalf of the skateboard community around here and a group called Positive Push. I was here a few months ago with a larger group of people who wanted to speak on how Urbana could benefit from a skateboard location provided by the city. Since that meeting, there has been a skate group created called Positive Push. The biggest reason we created this group was to create community within our skate community. But another huge reason was so we could have meetings about how we could get this skate location provided by the city. One of our members, Andrew Valentine, who just spoke, has been in contact with Christopher Evans about a presentation that we would like to present to the city about how the city of Urbana could collaborate with us and get a skate park location, or a skateboard location, not park, established for the community. I'm just reminding you guys that we are excited about this presentation. We as a group have collaborated or collected quite a bit of information on the whole subject and can't wait to share our ideas with you and see what the city thinks about it. Yeah, thanks for your time. Have a good night.
Good evening. My name is Imran. I'm an ER physician and I wanted to share a story about a recent patient that I treated. I treated a young woman who sustained a fracture dislocation of the bones in her wrist. This required me to relocate the bones, something we often use general sedation or general anesthesia for. To save time and the risk of deep sedation, this woman elected for a local nerve block instead. To my horror, the block didn't take. She began to feel the pain of the relocation and the movements of her bones. I offered to stop and sedate her generally, but she asked me to continue, stating, "At least I have access to local anesthesia." The Palestinians don't even have that. She stated this almost 2 months ago, and it has since haunted me. And it continues to do so. She was absolutely right. Because of a lack of ceasefire, Palestinians don't have access to medical supplies, and as a result are having to undergo amputations, C-sections without anesthesia. If you don't believe me, I urge you to read the testimonies of U.S. physicians that have recently gone to Gaza. Dr. Irfan Galleria in the Los Angeles Times says, "What I saw wasn't war, it was annihilation." Out of the nearly 30,000 deaths, 12,660 were children, 8,570 were women. This is as recent as yesterday on MiddleEastMonitor.com. You can continue to monitor these trends. This is directly because we don't have a ceasefire. Ladies and gentlemen, children cannot pick their political parties. In killing 20,000 women and children, we are not warding off some political party. Children cannot choose their political parties. This is collective punishment. This is a genocide. I stand in front of you as someone who holds human life to be sacred. I am here with my pregnant wife and my child, pleading you to please advocate for the Palestinian people. My wife does not have to undergo a C-section without anesthesia. My child does not have to eat grass. But their lives don't matter more than Palestinian women and children. Palestinians are also human. They also matter. And why are we discussing this? Why is this so important? Sure, Urbana City Council may not have international clout, but we must absolutely discuss these subjects as uncomfortable as they are. And yes, we can all come together to cease human suffering, and that is what I'm asking you to do. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Skylar Reefsteck. I was born in Champaign and I've lived in CU my entire life. My family's been in the area for a little over 100 years now, so I have roots that run deep here. CU has long represented a open-minded, future-thinking, and diverse community full of brilliant thinkers and compassion, not afraid to challenge the status quo of the rest of the state or even the country when necessary. It is in this history that I find a beacon of hope that proves that better things are possible. My humanity and the legacy of this great city is what brings me here today to express my strong support for the ceasefire resolution that our Palestinian friends and neighbors have been calling for. Let us please take a moment to understand that this conflict would not stop even if Hamas was completely annihilated. The material conditions that led to the conflict in the first place would still exist, and another militant group would take its place. This conflict existed before Hamas was in power, and it will continue existing afterwards. The bombs of today will create the militants of tomorrow. If you really want to dismantle Hamas, or whatever militant groups that come next, grant Palestinians the right to return. Give them full freedom of movement. Stop the violent Israeli settlers constantly encroaching on internationally recognized Palestinian land. Prove to Palestinians that Israel doesn't seek their destruction or to forcibly transfer its population. Israel is undoubtedly the more military capable power in this conflict, and anyone can recognize that. The country that can shut off power, water, and the flow of goods to the other is obviously the one that gets to call the shots, not the group that has to hide underground and build makeshift rockets with plumbing parts and dud Israeli shells. More killing isn't the answer. You simply cannot bomb a people into liking you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kate, and I'm a resident of Champaign, Urbana. I'm here today to support the ceasefire resolution. We have been here week after week pleading with you to simply state your support for human rights. As my past peers have mentioned, we are only asking that you recognize Palestinians' rights to survive, to live on their own land, to return to their land that they've been forcibly displaced from, and to move freely. That is all we're asking you. We're asking you to say that you want to stop the violence that is happening against them. 30,000 have been killed, many of them children. And you may say that this is an unfortunate side effect of war. However, there have been many reports of children who were shot by snipers. By snipers. These were not accidental deaths. They were purposeful. These children were shot because they were Palestinian. I also want to say that some people have said that this is a waste of time. And I think many of you might think the same. I think it's the exact opposite. I think that any fight for human rights of any group at any location, whether local, state, or national level, is an extremely important use of time. Who are we as humans if we do not fight for each other and our rights to live good, healthy lives? If we do not have our humanity, what are we? I also wanted to bring your attention to the fact that hospitals are still getting bombed and getting raided. This week there was a hospital in which doctors and elderly patients were detained and forced for hours to sit on the floor and abused. These people were not militants. They were doctors who were performing their duties. People ended up dying because electricity was cut off to the hospital. They were just patients there. There is no excuse for killing over 10,000 children, as well as patients in a hospital, doctors, and regular civilians. Euromed recently reported that the IOF invited soldiers to watch the torture of Palestinian hostages. Is that not a war crime? Is that okay to you? This is a genocide. People in Israel, in the government, have explicitly stated that. They have said that their intention is to cleanse the people of Palestine, to kick them out of their land and to use that land. They want to kill Palestinians. They have called them all human animals. We're asking you today to vote for a ceasefire. These Palestinians do not have time. They don't have time for you to wait and drag your feet. They are dying as we speak. You can wait for 10,000, 30,000 more to die, and those deaths will be blood on your hands because you have not spoken up against those deaths. You may think that by being silent, you are being neutral. That's not true. You are siding with the oppressors. You are letting these people die without saying anything. So I'm asking you again, please support the ceasefire resolution and state your support for human rights. Thank you.
My name is Karen Medina, and I am short, and so the microphone is pretty tall. And I have lived in Urbana-Champaign for 50 years. I believe that this city council room has been a fantastic place for this community to express its differing opinions on a very important topic. I don't think we could have ever gotten into one room together and had an opportunity to hear each other any other way. War is not something I would wish on my worst enemy. War is good for nothing. As for the goal being to kill all of Hamas, all of the people who hate others, I think we all know, if we think about it, this is an impossible goal. For a recent example, the entire world knows that all of Al-Qaeda cannot be killed off, that hatred grows and morphs during war. War cannot kill an ideology. The only thing that war does is kill parents of children and make them orphans. War kills children and the family mourns. War kills cousins. And yes, war kills soldiers. Does anybody in the room know how many soldiers that Israel has lost in this war? About 634. Approximately 1/5 of them by friendly fire. Evidently, it is really hard to distinguish the friend from the enemy. War is not the solution to anything. We come to this room, I believe, because we believe that words are very important and much more effective than violence. I believe that no one in this room would choose physical violence over public discourse. We are here because we value lives. We are here because we value the environment. War is a huge destroyer of the land and olive trees. War makes the entire area uninhabitable by anyone, even after the bombing stops. The blood will continue to flow into the sea, into the soil. There is not enough land to even bury all the dead and then build houses. There is no way to stop the trauma and the damage that has already been done. but there is a way to stop the damage that has not yet been done. I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank the people who stand up to speak and for all the work that they did in order to prepare what they had to say. I want to acknowledge all that work. I want to acknowledge the people who don't stand up here, but are still present as witnesses and supporters. I want to thank the City Council for this resolution discussion. If I were to rewrite the resolution, I would add that the United States should stop bombing Yemen, Syria, and Iraq for the same reasons that Israel should stop bombing Gaza. War creates enemies. Violence begets violence. Why don't we skip over the violence part and go to the really hard part, coming together in a room for peace talks? Let me leave you with a modified quote to think about. Who would have us kill people who are killing people to show that killing people is wrong?
Hi, I'm Leanne Smith. I am a resident of Urbana. It is a wonderful community that I have been proud to call my home for the last 3 years and hopefully several more in the future. I am here because it's my first time. I don't have a really nice, written out, well thought out thing to write, but I'm here because Palestinians have asked us to come and raise our voices in support of a ceasefire, in support of their liberation. And so I am here doing what I can to ask you all to do what you can. I know that Urbana is not Gaza. It is not Palestine. And I understand the impulse to say that you should only be concerned with your community. But this is your community. These are the people who elected you, and these are the people who have been showing up week after week, asking you to call for a ceasefire. They are your bosses, they put you in office, and they can take you out of it. And they have made their feelings very clear, as I am making my feelings clear now. What is happening in Gaza is a genocide, perpetuated not just by Israel, but also by the United States government, by the government that we are under, that we live under, that we fund, that we elect, and that are accountable to us. By showing that our community is in support of a ceasefire, in support of the end of the genocide, we apply pressure. And as the representatives of our community, you are in a unique position of power to show that support and apply that pressure on our government. I know that we've all learned about many of the crimes that have been committed throughout history, about slavery and the Holocaust, and also about resistance movements like civil rights and women's rights that were meant to fight against this oppression. I think that all of us have at some point asked ourselves the question, what would we do if we were alive then? We are finding the answer to that question for all of us right now. Do you want to look back on your life and think, when the genocide happened and I had the power to do something about it, I did nothing? I don't want that to be the answer that I give myself. I don't want that to be the answer that I give my descendants. And that is why I am here today. And I am here today because I don't think that's the answer you want to give yourselves or your families either. I think that it is abundantly clear that a ceasefire is the most humane option. It is something that the majority of Americans are in support of. And regardless of whether or not that was true, it is simply right. Children should not die. They should not be starved. Hospitals should not be bombed. We have the opportunity here to make our voices heard, and I thank you all for giving us that chance. But now you have a chance to make your voices heard. Will you speak? Will you speak for the Palestinians who are being forced to drink dirty water, who are having to subsist off of animal feed? Will you speak for the Palestinians who are being arrested in the 48 borders for posting WhatsApp statuses in support of their fellow countrymen? Will you use your voice in support of your fellow human beings whose only crime was being born in the wrong part of the world? It could have been us. It could have been any of us. They are just as human as we are. And in applying the pressure to push for a ceasefire, you are not only showing them that their lives matter, you are showing all of us that our lives have value, that all of us are important. Pushing for a ceasefire is the only way to show your support for the sanctity of human life, and pushing to address the injustice that caused this war in the first place is the only way to end this violence. You have the opportunity to do the right thing. Take it.
Hello, my name is Rohini Vembar. I am a resident of Urbana, and much like many other people here tonight, I am here to voice my support of a resolution for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Firstly, I'd like to stress the importance of taking this issue up with the City Council. At the meeting last week, I heard many sentiments along the lines of, this is not a local issue, City Council meetings should be used for addressing local issues only. It's local governments that are the face of individual communities, and it's what gets done at this level that influences what happens and who gets put in power at state and federal levels. Each body of local government that calls for ceasefire puts more pressure on the United States federal government and President Biden. A resolution for ceasefire does not take away from other issues in the community. The people that are here tonight are representative of what is important to Urbana as a community. We've heard many people bring up October 7th, 2023 as the day that crisis first struck, but what they fail to mention is that the Israeli occupation of Palestine, including the forced expulsion of Palestinians from their homes, subsequent massacres by the Zionist movement, has been ongoing for over 75 years. That's 75 years of apartheid, 75 years of continuous efforts to rid the region of the Arab population. Even if we are looking only at the last 4 months, it's estimated that over 22,000 Palestinians have been murdered since October 7th, and that's understating it. I believe that is enough to be considered a genocide. Whether it's the resolution that has been drafted already or one that members of the council are willing to collaborate on, I urge you to stand up for the lives of the Palestinian people. Help us, the residents of Champaign-Urbana, make our voices heard. Unfortunately, we do live in times when people are so divided, but that doesn't mean that we should just sit around and wait for what some people may refer to as peace. Status quo for one group is just continued oppression for another. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shauna Miller. I am an Urbana resident, taxpayer, and voter. Before I get into what I have written down, I just want to make a note that we probably would actually be addressing other important city matters if we would actually move forward with something with this resolution instead of, I don't know, continuing on and on with it. Just, I don't know, an idea, I guess. So I spoke at the first city council meeting where the resolution was proposed, and I'm sad to see that this call for a resolution doesn't seem to be taken seriously. I know city council re-election isn't due until spring 2025, but I personally don't forgive and forget. I remember and recover. Due to your silence, I will not be voting for Jaya Colasetti, for instance. I hope many others follow suit with their respective wards unless something drastically changes. But I shouldn't need voting threats such as this to get this council to decide that funding a genocide is wrong. I follow several Gazan citizens' Instagrams. I've seen civilians being shot at while hunting for food or waiting for aid. I've seen the cats eating corpses. I've seen the children sniped in hospitals while being treated for other wounds. I've seen the doctors forced to evacuate Nasir Hospital just to be kidnapped. Meanwhile, no Hamas members were found at Nasir. Given what little evidence was found during the massacres and evacuations of other hospitals, I'm not the least bit surprised. Thankfully, the doctor I follow, who was besieged there for weeks, is still alive and isn't missing, but many medical personnel who bravely worked alongside him have been murdered or kidnapped. What I just described should be enough for you, but on top of that, everyone in Palestine is starving. The Nazis were some of the worst people to live on this earth. Words cannot explain how absolutely atrocious those people are. Even the Nazis fed their prisoners. Denying aid is collective punishment. Shooting indiscriminately at people trying to obtain what little aid is available is collective punishment. Besieging and snipering medical personnel in hospitals is collective punishment. This is genocide, and it absolutely isn't necessary. But the Israeli government and military know that, because this has never been about Hamas. If it were, they would bother to leave some sort of semblance of infrastructure behind, and they wouldn't be torturing everyone collectively. They're doing it because they can, and they want their land. I have seen children scraping their parents' remains off the ground. I've seen the rotting corpses of Gaza City now that the army has moved down to Rafah, which was supposed to be a safe place. Safe in Gaza? What a joke. But I wish I were joking, because these atrocities continue happening, and I cannot look away. Apparently, many of you can. You can't even bother yourselves to read the emails people send you, instead making excuses week after week about why testimony can't be made public. How many more hands need to be pulled out of the rubble? How many more doctors kidnapped? How many more parents will come back to their families after waiting in line for hours for flour to find that while they were gone, their families were massacred? Gaza's daily death count exceeds all other major conflicts of the 21st century, roughly 250 people per day. When will you listen to and join Chicago, the largest city in the country, to pass a ceasefire resolution? Because I'm tired of watching good people getting tortured and massacred on the daily. I'm tired of watching my politicians do nothing about it when a message needs to be sent. If I can't look away as an average citizen with compassion for my fellow human beings, an average citizen without much to contribute except my voice, my vote, and some tax dollars, neither should you. And the fact you think you should be able to look away and that this genocide appears to be nothing but a nuisance to you at the weekly city council meeting says a lot about you. I don't think it's the message you want it to send either. Your voice has a lot more power than mine, even though we are neighbors. Use it.
Yeah.
Can we have a point of order? Hey, everybody has a right to say what they're going to say, but nobody's telling anybody what to say. So let's stop that right now.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Theobald. I've lived in Urbana now for almost 8 years. I would just like to remind you there was a Save the Post Office event a few weeks ago at the Independent Media Center. I think that's something very important, because right now we're trying to fight to save our post offices and save a lot of our local employees here in our local Urbana area, because our federal government will not support our local post offices areas. But yeah, just that was just something that happened at the Independent Media Center. Now, I also want to talk about in terms of this city's. The city has a history of actually speaking on international affairs, not just in terms of the war, resolution opposing against the war in Iraq, but also resolution number 727 R46, resolution of the City Council of Urbana, Illinois, on the need to bring an immediate end to the United States military involvement in Southeast Asia on May 3rd, 1971. I'm not going to read the whole thing as it's very long, but as it says, whereas the terrible toll of American intervention in the countries of Southeast Asia continues to be felt among our own people, and declare and wage war, and therefore must accept the responsibility for its continuance, be it therefore resolved that the City of Urbana, Illinois, calls upon the President and the Congress through its members from the area to act immediately to stop the bombing of Southeast Asia and withdraw all military forces. Now, that sentence that says continues to be felt among our own people like Fadia Al-Farine, who in just a few hours from here in Plainfield, Illinois, who was killed by his landlord because he was a Palestinian, and now his mother has to live the rest of her life because her son, who was because they were Palestinian, was killed in a hate crime. And I also say that these types of conflicts increased hate crimes against both Muslim Americans and as well as the Jewish community. In 2018 in Pittsburgh at the Tree of Life Synagogue, 11 Jewish people were killed during in 2018 when the conflicts in Israel and Palestine were again rising. So yes, this does have a matter in terms of why it matters here at the local level. So I also would like to read just a little bit of an article by Dave Steiber, who is a teacher part of the Chicago Teachers Union. Our union called for a ceasefire, and it's because it's about our students. If you teach, your absolute worst nightmare is that something tragic happens to your students. Teachers don't just think about students when they are in front of us. We think about them through each day and night. Caring about students also means deliberately caring about the world we are helping them grow into. We have to advocate for them all the time. For many of us teachers, we also have to wrestle with how to respond when something tragic happens to our students. And tragedy strikes as a devastating regular pace. Losing one student is unbearable. I've lost damn near a classroom over my 17 years from intracommunal violence, police violence, and tragic actions. Think about and seeing in the pain and families' experience is soul-shattering. Watching what is happening in Gaza has been soul-shattering too. More than 6,600 children have been killed since October 7th. That number has very much increased since then, since this article was published. Many are now without parents. Some have been held hostage. Every one of them is someone's child, someone's loved one, someone's students. I've been told directly that teachers need to stick to teaching, that international matters aren't something we should talk about, that educators don't have any right to comment on this issue, on issues that we may seem far away. But we know what it's like to lose students, to see young people suffer, whether that child is in Chicago, in Israel, Palestine, or anywhere in the world. We don't want anyone else to experience this pain. That's why for the first time in the history of the Chicago Teachers Union, we approved a resolution to improve how we support students during world conflicts. And violence and murder anywhere is the same everywhere. If we are not okay with kids dying in Chicago, then we cannot be okay with kids dying in Palestine. Cease fire now. Thank you very much.
I am Mark Sneer. I am a citizen of Urbana. I heard today and in the past weeks a lot of stuff that I agree with as a Jew and as an Israeli. Yes, death of Palestinians, innocent Palestinians, is terrible. Yes, a ceasefire is desirable. Nobody disagree with the need for a ceasefire. We're not debating here whether there should be a ceasefire or not. We are debating whether the city of Urbana should endorse a particular resolution calling for ceasefire. And that resolution is clearly heavily biased. I heard today a lot of things that I agree with. Violence begets violence. The violence of October 7 begot the violence that is happening now in Gaza, and the violence that is happening now in Gaza is going to beget more violence. Both sides are becoming increasingly opposed to each other. Both sides increasingly see no possibility for peace resolution of the conflict. I heard also vicious circles, vicious lies being said here. What is happening in Gaza is terrible. It's not a genocide. The only thing that was declared to be a genocide by the court, international court, after World War II, is the death of close to 1 million Tutsis in Rwanda. That's the only thing that was declared as a genocide by an international court. Comparing the victims of war in Gaza and saying that's a genocide is just a vicious lie. I also heard stuff that really makes me quite angry, comparing what's happening in Gaza with what the Nazis did is so out of proportion that it's just vicious. And this community cannot come together when each side tries to throw dirt on the other side that disagree with it. What can Urbana, the city of Urbana, do? It can pass a resolution that will be more balanced, less balanced, and will make no difference. Urbana is different, and Urbana can do things differently. What matters now is that both sides in this conflict are becoming increasingly desperate for resolving the conflict by force. As we heard here by several people, what is needed, they say, is not only a ceasefire, is repairing what was done wrong 75 years ago. What was done wrong 75 years ago was creating a Jewish state. If that's wrong, it means that these people want to see the Jewish state disappear. If that's what Urbana wants to encourage, then certainly I don't want to be a citizen of this city. If Urbana doesn't want to encourage the disappearance of the Jewish state, what it can do is encourage a dialogue, because the only place where Palestinians and Israeli or Jews can speak to each other today is not in Gaza or in Tel Aviv, it may be Urbana. Doing so, making sure that the two sides work together toward what is a peaceful solution to the conflict is much more important than writing an empty, purposeless resolution that doesn't represent the inhabitants of Urbana.
Hi, my name is Sana Sabuala. I'm a resident of Urbana. I understand that the City Council wants to move discussions of this ceasefire resolution outside of this public comment towards a format for discussion that could create compromise. I'm disappointed by this. I was told that the ceasefire resolution as it stands doesn't express enough of the Israeli narrative, not the Jewish narrative, but the Israeli narrative. The same council person who had this discussion with me told me that they no longer watch the footage of what's happening in Palestine because it's too heartbreaking. I understand that feeling, like, believe me, I understand that feeling, but I think it's important to bear witness to what our government is funding. If we can't even do that, then that speaks to the need for change and for action. If the footage of what our government is funding in Palestine is too horrible for people to even look at, how can you ask us to be more inclusive of the perspectives of the people committing those atrocities on our dime? There are no factually incorrect statements in the ceasefire resolution, nothing that's been proven false by a verified third party. Yet here, apparently it's too divisive to present facts with context that goes back to 1948, really 1917. The City Council keeps saying that they aren't informed enough on this topic, but after this long, it's a choice to stay uninformed. I'm an instructor at the university and have nearly completed my PhD, which focuses on how colonialism and generational trauma affect the body. I've completed a certificate in Holocaust, Genocide, and Memory Studies. I would say that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. I regularly facilitate conversations on topics like race, gender, and colonialism in my classes. As a Pakistani American, I've been forced to have working relationships with many people who genuinely thought or made assumptions about me, ranging from that I'm a terrorist, that I have been, my family must be oppressive, that Western society has somehow liberated me. As an American who grew up in a post 9/11 society, I have been raised to be accommodating to a certain kind of ignorance. Even so, I'm not capable of compromising with people who see the heartbreaking atrocity going on in Gaza and who would call me a terrorist or an extremist or a radical for unequivocally supporting Palestinian liberation from the river to the sea. As I watch Palestinians eat animal feed and see doctors being trapped in hospitals and think of the images of children's mangled remains, children who should be remembered for their smiles, not their limbs, I want to look away. But I realize that I can't because looking away would allow it to continue, and that's unacceptable to me, and I'm not afraid to say it. It should be unacceptable to you, and you shouldn't be afraid to say it either. In fact, I think the ceasefire resolution as it stands could be much more strongly worded in favor of Palestinian liberation, including actionable items like divestment measures and protection for protesters. If the city wants to open up this resolution for amendment, you need to understand how compromising what has already been presented is. Thank you.
Hey there, everybody. My name is Ben Jocelyn. Like so many of us, I wish I was not here once again. The term genocide has a legal definition. The case that South Africa took before the World Court was ruled on 15-2 that said this is plausibly a genocide.
Point of order. Point of order.
It was also ruled on 16-1 in some of the measures that it was plausibly a genocide. As some folks say, this is not controversial, it's fact, you can look it up. The terms that are being used have very strict legal definitions. I'm not in the business of trying to do comparative trauma. That's not the point. The point is to stop what's happening now. And 16 graveyards have been dug up in Gaza. The imbalance of power is so severe that not even the dead can rest. When questioned about it, folks try and prove that there's a tunnel there. And even CNN, who's told all matter of propaganda, looks at it and says, no, we don't think that there is a tunnel that you're trying to bomb or trying to dig up here. It's just desecrated graves. I am all for getting behind a resolution that unites the people. I think that we should unequivocally stand for the liberation of all people, that all people have a right to self-sovereignty, to determine their own political leadership and safety within their borders. I think that this resolution does this. I haven't seen a single factual thing that says, here's what's wrong about it. There's plenty of things that talk about the crimes that are occurring, the things that have happened. But I've yet to hear one thing that says this is not true. And I'm sorry if people don't feel safety in it. I want to tell you unequivocally that I am terrified about the rise of anti-Semitism, about hate crimes that are happening, about the march in Charlottesville. If that happens here, I promise everybody in this room that I will be at the counter protest. But right now, the United States continues to. It looks like next week we're going to vote, or later this week, we're once again going to veto a UN ceasefire measure. And that's not tenable. That's just not okay. Please vote yes on a ceasefire. Please bring it forward.
My name is Josh. I'm a resident of Urbana, and I did not intend to speak tonight, but then somebody stood before you about 10 minutes ago and said, at least the Nazis fed their prisoners. Well, this is blatantly false. We know this is false. I'm not even going to spend a moment of time refuting that. It's absurd. You all know it's absurd, and 90% of people in this room know it's absurd. Yet it got applause because she threw in a little bit of pro-ceasefire language. This is exactly what a lot of people were afraid this extended discussion would bring. Mayor Marlin, on January 8th, opened this, before it was even brought to the table, said that she was against us talking about this for the simple point that, forget that it wasn't city business or referring to one point of view, but the fact that it would divide us and permanently damage relationships within our community, no matter what position or side one chooses on this issue. Jews are the victims of 60% of all religious hate crimes in this country, according to the FBI. They were already hitting record highs before October 7th. And I do not know the stats, but I'm sure, I'm almost positive that it has increased as well for Arab American and Muslim Americans. We just saw an example of it right now. We just did. And, Ms. Wilkins, Councilwoman, you were a co-sponsor on the original leading for this to be a discussion on January 8th. And last week, you stated, about 5 weeks after Mayor Marlin did, but you essentially pointed to what she said, that it would be important that there's a body, not the city, to find a more agreeable form of a resolution. And you noted that you hope we don't continue to have more local polarization In my opinion, I think you helped to let the genie out of the bottle on that one. Simply by saying, no, we should discuss this in a public forum. But you then were also saying, well, I'm personally not knowledgeable and experienced enough on this topic, even with some additional research, to make more detailed input or modifications to proposals like this. I would have hoped that anybody, whether they vote for or against something like this, would do their research and say yes or no. But the fact that you are now saying, well, maybe I don't know so much about that, is a little disorienting to me, I think. I don't really have too much more to say. I think, as Mr. Evans pointed out, and he's my ward person, in his article in the News Gazette, 93% of third graders in Urbana can't read at grade level. Yeah, we clearly have an education problem, as you just witnessed. And I do think that things like that should be our focus. I don't have anything more to say. People have already been killed. There was a man in Los Angeles who was murdered because he was shoved down and his head hit the sidewalk at a protest in Los Angeles. I know there was that 6-year-old boy in Chicago who was murdered by his landlord. This is escalating domestically too. As you said, Ms. Wilkin, taking this to a forum outside the city would be, I think, a great way to actually discuss this in a way that isn't so, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but the fact that this has been in the city, I think we are using up city resources to do this. And that's a burden on us as a taxpayer as well, and much more directly as it, as it relates to local taxes. So that's all I really have to say. Thank you very much.
Every country has the right to defend itself, and the key word is defend. Just use of force is a countermeasure to aggression, not a countermeasure to the existence of aggressors. As to the argument that Hamas uses people as human shields, we should not venerate the hostage negotiator who kills the hostages to avoid negotiations. Innocent Americans, Israelis, and Palestinians exist. No government that operates by means other than consensus completely represents its people. At the same time, our country has repeatedly allowed Israel to avoid a Security Council peacekeeping mission to bring peace to the region. We have repeatedly voted against such measures. So, because our country is so influential in this sphere, we should vote to send a message that we are not okay with what's going on, that we are okay with self-defense, but not genocide. Thank you.
I'm sorry, could you give me your name?
My name is Stephen McGuire.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Weichsel. I've been a resident of Champaign and Urbana for a very, very long time. I'm probably the oldest person in this room. A discussion of this sort, or a conversation of this sort, often has the consequence of muddying the waters, making certain things which ought to be clear, unclear. Let me try to refocus on where we really are. First of all, there's a natural tendency to conflate the concept of a ceasefire with the concept of no violence. If I knew that a ceasefire of any sort would guarantee, in some sense, no more violence in the Middle East, I'd be the first one to sign up to vote for it. The fact of the matter is the following. The fight that's going on right now is a fight between the organization Hamas, which at the moment rules Gaza, and the Israeli government. Now, what is Hamas all about? Another thing that is often done is to conflate Hamas with the Palestinian people. Nothing could be further than the truth. Read the declaration which defines Hamas, written by Hamas. There are two very important parts of that declaration. Number one, it says its purpose is to destroy the state of Israel as a Jewish entity, unequivocally. The second thing it says is that it is his duty to kill Jews wherever Hamas meets them, anywhere in the world. Now, you might say, well, that's rhetoric. They don't really mean that. What more evidence do you want that they mean that than, first of all, the events of the 7th of October of last year and the thousands and thousands of rockets that Hamas has rained over the state of Israel for many, many years? So what is a ceasefire going to accomplish? If it leaves Hamas in place, it will simply give Hamas an opportunity to rearm, to reorganize, and according to their own statements made not more than a few weeks ago, to again produce an event like the 7th of October. How can anyone in their right mind suggest to a country to agree to allow such a nation to live next door to it? Now, the reason that does happen, in my opinion, is simply the fact that what's really needed here, or what's really intended here, is not a ceasefire. What is intended is to further the aim of Hamas to make sure that the state of Israel as a Jewish state will not exist anymore in the Middle East. That's what it's all about. And so I ask you folks who sit at this desk, do you want to go down as that organization would put their stamp of approval on an effort whose stated purpose, specifically stated purpose, is to destroy a country in the Middle East? Let me conclude by simply saying that a lot has been said about the Holocaust and so on, or things like that. I know a little bit about that. I lost all of my grandparents in the Holocaust that was accomplished by the Nazis in the Second World War. If the 20th century has proven anything to people who have their eyes open and have some historical insight, it is that when someone says to you, "I will kill you," you better believe them. And you better believe that the Jews of the 21st century have learned that lesson well and will not allow that to happen again. If you don't think that that is justified, then I'll let you conclude yourself what is really behind your attitude. So please reject this for what it is, not an attempt to save lives, but rather to set the situation up to kill more Jews. That's it. It's very simple. Thank you.
My name is Vadim Zharnitsky. I'm a member of Champaign-Urbana community and of Jewish community and University of Illinois community. Let me start.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
I'm sorry?
Speak into the mic.
Okay, thanks. I'm strongly against the ceasefire resolution. After I have seen with my own eyes the results of the atrocities in the kibbutzim near Oz, Kfar Aza, and seeing the Noah Festival Memorial. I'm sure many of you would have a similar opinion if you saw it. Only with the resolution asking for unconditional return of the hostages, unconditional surrender or removal of Hamas from Gaza, one can consider a ceasefire. Let me try to persuade you by describing what it would be like for the Champaign-Urbana community. Suppose some nearby city, I don't know, St. Joseph, Rantoul, Homer, is taken under control by some thugs trying to eliminate Champaign-Urbana. They shoot rockets randomly, which are imprecise, but they can kill and do kill. One day they massacre some young people, let's say at a festival at Meadowbrooks Park, and take some as hostages. Some of them are your relatives or children or friends. On top of it, they say they will continue doing all these things, and the massacre was only the first step to make Champaign-Urbana free. You have an option to do nothing or to eliminate the threat and save the hostages. You send a military force to that city. The army has many young people of the age of students of UFI. And in fact, I've seen at Tel Aviv University half-empty rooms. The students serve in IDF. Any buildings they enter in that city, they can be ambushed. There are booby traps. They are shot at from windows. The civilians are among the terrorists often used as human shields. Some hostages are released, but some are still there at unknown location and under known conditions. There are no good choices, but ceasefire leaves the hostages in captivity and the genocidal regime in control of the city. Ask yourself, would you really support a ceasefire under such situation? Many people I know in Illinois would probably join the fight rather than ask for a ceasefire in such situation. Whatever is one's view on a conflict, a much more efficient way is to contact your elected representatives in the federal government. The city council has many other issues to solve. If you really want to issue some useful resolution, consider something that might have a real effect, such as resolution against Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Thanks.
My name is Marina Manetti, and I would like to give some words of my lifelong research about what breeds violence. And I've been studying it since my mother also was a survivor of the Second World War. She looked Jewish as a child of 9. They stopped the train because she looked Jewish, and they wanted her birth certificate demonstrated by her mother, and it was demonstrated that she was an Italian citizen and not Jewish. But she made it her business when she survived that disaster called World War II to find out what made humanity do that insane behavior. And she had all her shelves filled with what happened there. And she became an extreme history buff. And I, as a consequence, followed in her researches. And I have learned that violence breeds violence, and nothing more than violence. I took a class with an Indian professor at the U of I called Violence and Community because her parents had survived the partition of Pakistan and the rest of India. And she wanted to know where this all started. It started in colonial behavior of the British, who had the money, the big money, and divided and conquered as they exited when they saw the shame that they were made publicly to be broadcast all over the world when they continued to beat down the Gandhian people who were resisting colonial rule. They couldn't keep their heads up anymore, the British, and they had to make their exit. But they did it by fomenting a bloodbath between India and Pakistan. The same maneuver happened in the Middle East. The Palestinians and the Jews were living peaceably together in that area, and the British did the same thing. Divide and then foment hatred. So that happened there again. I was a Zionist because most members of my family were survivors, were marrying survivors of the Jewish Holocaust, Jews. And some of these people were activists, political activists. And so I was reading Zionist literature until at the U of I here, I participated in a protest of massacres. And I thought, okay, no one can argue with this. I have a poster, never again, no more massacres. Shabra and Shatil, no more massacres. And I thought, everyone has to agree with this. And I found people screaming their lungs out with rabid red faces saying they wanted massacres. I was like, who are these people who are these people who are screaming that they want more massacres? And I finally found out that there were people who called themselves Zionists. I went home to my brother-in-law and my sister, who had married a son who was born of a survivor. And I said to my sister, Zionists are fascists. They were screaming in my face that they wanted more massacres. And I finally, my sister turned to her husband and said, is that true, Michael? Moshe? And he said, yes, Zionists are fascists, and they do want more massacres. So I was very intrigued that he was very straightforward about this. My sister was not very informed, but I was. I mean, and he was as
Finish
well.
your thought, and then we have to move on.
Okay. My final word is trauma breeds trauma and nothing but. And when we see pictures of children mangled and mutilated crying for help and find out that they get shot with impunity, trauma is bred, and we all know that. Ceasefire now!
Okay, I'm sorry, you'll be the last person, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. It will be much shorter.
20 people have gone through.
Could you, point of order, don't we have 2 hours for public input total? And I would recommend we keep the same time for everyone, since we started at 5 minutes each.
I'm going to talk for like 30 seconds.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Yardena Shul. I just wanted to echo things that were said before me. If people want no more trauma, no more massacre, no more pain, and so on, as I think a lot of us do, please, if you want a resolution that actually calls for a ceasefire, for the hostages to go home, for Hamas to be dismantled, and for international aid and security assurance for Palestinians, please email stav, stav.sh1@gmail.com. I agree, this is not very fruitful. Let's try to do something about it and make it happen if people actually care.
Could you repeat that email?
stav.sh1@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Okay, so 5 minutes or 3? Okay.
Hi, good evening, council members and everybody here. My name is Carmel Elazar, and as per Stav and offer earlier regarding the discussion together and meeting together to discuss the possible resolution, I agreed to resolution. I was not planning to speak today, but actually I heard things today which I just emotionally, which I normally don't get here too emotionally, I could not resist on speaking here. So first of all, I heard about how the Nazis were even better than the Israelis or something of that type. And as a person that a large part of his family, of my grandparents' family, was burnt in concentration camps, gathered from their towns, taken by trains to concentration camps, and burned there. I cannot even understand how someone can say something like that. The second thing that I heard today, that I am, as an Israeli, which was supporting the peace movement in Israel with a two-state solution, apparently I'm a fascist. That's what I was told just a few minutes ago, which is, again, terrible to say something like that, to take a group of people and just decide that they are fascists because I don't know why even was decided that way. And the third thing I wanted to say is that I heard the word genocide over and over and over and over again tonight. Now, I understand that people here are watching a lot of people were saying that. They saw all kind of movies and videos coming from TikTok or Twitter or whatever. I mean, I usually tend to take main media news outlets and not videos posted on social media as my news input. Obviously it should be as wide as possible media, to see all possible sides, but not to focus on movies from TikToks and so on. But the main thing here is the word genocide was coming over and over and over again. And there is an international court, and the international court heard the case that came from South Africa. And as I said previously already on this stage here, the international court does have the right to order a ceasefire. But the international court did not conclude and did not think there's an imminent need to stop the war in Gaza right now, to have an immediate ceasefire due to genocide. The court did not think that way. It could have ordered that, but it hasn't. Now, it did order a few things, and I'll just briefly go through what the court ordered. So it ordered to prevent acts prohibited in the 1948 UN Genocide Convention. It ordered to prevent and punish statements that constitute incitement to genocide. It ordered to ensure to provision basic services and humanitarian aid, and to report back to the court in 1 month. So the orders, and Israel is complying with these requirements. But the court did not at any point say there is a serious threat of a genocide in order to stop, in order to ceasefire in Gaza. The reason it did not do it is because it does not believe there's a genocide. It had the ability to do that, but it chose not to. And it chose not to because it does not believe a genocide is happening. And the proceedings will continue, and we'll see how it all comes out. Now, the last thing I wanted to point out is that the current resolution that's being offered here is not a ceasefire resolution. It's an indictment against Israel. If you read through that, it's an indictment saying Israel is doing a whole bunch of things, not by a court, by a person here that decided to write that resolution. And the main beneficiary of such an indictment, if it will pass here, or will happen besides this place, is the winning of Hamas. Hamas will be able to stay in power and continue what has been done for the past 20 years. So, as was suggested here earlier, if there is a discussion about a ceasefire, it should be based on facts and benefits for the region, not an indictment against Israel. Thank you very much. And one more thing, the solution for the issue between Israel and the Palestinians, which has been going on for 100 years, will be resolved only through negotiations and a two-state solution. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Hi, my name's David Huber. I'm a resident of Urbana. Here to talk about another issue that's not on the agenda. I was hiding out in the back to let this unfold. I'm here to express my dismay with the recent council action, which is a request to the planning staff to initiate a rezoning of 205 North High Cross Road. I just learned of this today. My thoughts aren't totally organized. I'll go to the Plan Commission on Thursday. But my dismay is not specific. I don't really have strong opinions about the cell storage or Behringer Commons and so on. It's more a general, let's say, unease with what seems like a lack of strategy and forward movement on the part of the council. This was an issue that was decided 4 years ago to change the zoning from B1 to B3. Now we're back at it. And as someone who does business in the city, it sends a very odd signal that sort of what is it going to be? Can we trust that when something is zoned a certain way that it will remain that way? Or will it sort of be relitigated 4 years down the road? And it troubles me specifically because I work with city staff, and I know that community development is bleeding staff at the moment. The planning department is down to 2, I think, from 5. In my discussions with the city staff, and we know, we just don't have the time. We know we need to deal with this. We know the planning ordinance is a mess and needs substantial work, and it's always put off, and it's kind of put off with kind of the promise that, we're doing the comprehensive plan. We need to have a kind of big strategy before we go in and kind of plug these holes. I respect it, but then out of nowhere, when we're down to 2 staff members, and Kevin had just come to the meeting in the fall to give some priorities for the planning department, this emerges again. I suppose I can only assume that a lot of other things had to be dropped to take up this case. So our resources as a city are scarce, they're stretched. That's what I'm told very often. And yet, when a very passionate group of homeowners come before us, it sort of, we're willing to rethink what had already been decided 4 years ago. And I watched that meeting, and 2 of the members of the council were there at the time, and most of the discussion was about a multi-use path, and it was about the tax exemption of OSF. And it seems that maybe the bigger issue was kind of missed in those details of, is this the kind of zoning that we want to survive forever, beyond whether OSF does what they're going to do or not. The last thing I'll say is I've lived here 5-6 years. City staff will often make the comment, yeah, Urbana thinks of itself as a bedroom community. And I think, what does that mean? Like, well, they're always opposed to commercial development. It's like, what is bedroom community? And well, this, more than any other thing since I've lived here, has kind of proven that point, that a big group of homeowners, a homeowner association shows up, they don't want what is perceived as something bad happening behind their community. And now we throw strategy out the window, we throw the agenda out the window, it would seem, and go and pursue this issue. Their issue is with high taxes that they pay and that they kind of deserve something better. Well, how do we get out of this cycle of high taxes if we don't diversify the tax base, and get out of this cycle of residents who say, you can't do that because I pay tons of taxes, and forego a lot of other tax revenue potentially. So in the end, actually, let me just end it while I'm here. Hotel Royer. Idea, if there is going to be something like a $500,000 deduction for the 3 months, if I read that right, can we maybe try to allocate that money potentially to like downtown businesses who might have been promised, say, that a hotel was going to be there a year or 2 ago and made certain investments in anticipation of that hotel, and now are seeing some difficulty potentially? Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address City Council? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for everything and everybody that had input today. Is there a staff report?
No staff report.
Okay, new business. We'll start with resolution number 2024-02-004R, a resolution authorizing contribution to a community minimum revenue guarantee, MRG, for leisure air service at Willard Airport. Before I start, sorry, I did have some emails that I need to read out loud. Sorry. I'm sorry, regarding public input. I'm sorry, let me go backwards. Point of order. My name is Julia Boldrick. I am a local community member and I support a ceasefire. Justice and equality are always city's business. If we are ignored by our state representatives, one of the ways we can make our voices heard is to petition on local levels as is our right as constituents, a right also noted in the resolution opposing war against Iraq. When the larger bodies of government fail to represent the will of the people have every right to call on their local governments to recognize the needs of the majority. We call on you now. The city of Urbana might not have control over the war, but the council has complete control over whether they recognize the voices of the people they've been elected to represent. Stand on the right side of history. Thank you, Julia Boldrick. Hello, my name is Barry Zhang. I am a student at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I, along with over 2/3 of American voters, am demanding that the Urbana City Council pass a resolution calling for a permanent, immediate ceasefire in Palestine now. The people of Palestine have been displaced to the southernmost region of the Gaza Strip called Rafah. They are currently under siege and are being attacked, bombed, displaced, and starved. This brutal behavior simply cannot be tolerated, and it is our responsibility to make sure that this brutality comes to an end right now. Call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, as well as the right for Palestinians to return to their homes in the north of Gaza. Sincerely, Barry. My name is Kendra Calhoun. I am a local community member in support of a ceasefire in Gaza. Every day that the U.S. government continues to fund Israel's war is another day that it condones the dehumanization of Palestinians, the murder of thousands upon thousands of children, the destruction of Palestine's infrastructure and autonomy, and Israel's explicit genocidal mission. As our state representatives continue to ignore our calls to protect Palestinians and call for a ceasefire, the City Council has the opportunity to uplift the voices of the Urbana community and add to the growing list of city councils that have done the same for their local communities. Palestine and Palestinian people have the right to safety and security, access to food, water, health care, and education, freedom of movement, joy. Ceasefire now. Kendra Calhoun, PhD. My name is Nick Aboud, and I am a local community member. I support an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. On October 13th, Gio Elan, an advisor to Defense Minister Gallant, former head of National Security Council and former IDF operations chief, said, Israel needs to create a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, compelling tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands to seek refuge in Egypt or the Gulf. Israel has already achieved the first part of that statement with the massacre of more than 30,000 Palestinians, the collapse of the medical infrastructure, the destruction of more than 70% of residential buildings, and the collective starvation of the 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. Israeli officials have time and time again clarified their intent for Gaza: genocide, destruction, and ethnic cleansing. I demand a ceasefire, and I urge the Council to adopt the ceasefire resolution that was presented to it on January 8th. My name is Hind Abdel Fattah, and I am a local community member. I support a ceasefire. Like many Americans, I draw a hard line at hostages. Prior to 10/7, there were 5,000 Palestinians held in Israeli prisons, primarily from the West Bank. More than 1,200 of these are hostages being detained without being charged or allowed to stand trial. These numbers are up to greater than 7,500 detained and more than 2,000 being held without charge or trial. These Palestinians are often abducted from their homes by Israeli forces during night raids, where they terrorize not only the abductees, but also their families and sometimes entire neighborhoods. According to Human Rights Watch, Palestinians held in Israeli prisons are held under inhumane conditions, often with restrictions on food, medicines, and basic hygiene. Palestinians who are returned to their families report physical and mental abuse and often sexual assault. They are put in solitary confinement for months on end. This has been occurring since 1967, and the number of illegally detained hostages has been steadily increasing. This is not including the gruesome details of the 1,000 Palestinian children who go through military courts every year. Palestinian children in the military detention system face physical and emotional abuse, and 4 out of 5, 86% of them being beaten, and 69% of them searched, according to a new research by Save the Children. If we are ignored by our state representatives, one of the ways we can make our voices heard is to petition on local levels, as is our right as constituents, a right also noted in the resolution opposing war against Iraq. When the larger bodies of government fail to represent the will of the people have every right to call on their local governments to recognize the needs of the majority. We call on you now. The city of Urbana might not have control over the war, but the council has complete control over whether they recognize the voices of the people they have been elected to represent. Hind Hadafata. Those are the only ones that are being read, have been asked to read out loud. I have others that will be included with the minutes for next week that have people that have also written in. Now that is the end of public input. Okay, and our new business resolution number 2024-02004R, resolution authorizing contribution to a community minimum revenue guarantee, MRG, for leisure air service at Willard Airport. And we have today representing.
I'll be presenting this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Marlin.
I want to say, first of all, illness has been sweeping through city staff this week, so some of us are standing in for people who had intended to be here tonight, so please have patience. But anyway, this first resolution deals with the request for City Council to authorize $50,000 as the City of Urbana's minimum the City of Urbana's contribution to a community minimum revenue guarantee to attract leisure air service to Willard Airport. Last week, the council had a presentation from Willard Airport Executive Director Tim Bannon, the Champaign County Economic Development Corporation Director Carly McKay, and Volair aviation consultant, airport consultant Jack Penning. I'll summarize what you have received in your memo, and then I understand that Carly and Tim may have some additional information to present tonight, and they'll be happy to answer questions. It's clear that Willard Airport is an important part of our regional economy. There's an economic impact on businesses and residents alike. It's very important to especially the University of Illinois and the business community that we maintain competitiveness in our local airport. It also has an impact on services available to residents in this community and our quality of life. We're being asked to contribute to a minimum revenue guarantee to attract leisure air service to Florida, Arizona, or Las Vegas. The University of Illinois has committed $500,000 to this fund. Public and private members are being asked to contribute another $500,000 to build a fund of about $1 million. Funds contributed or committed by the City of Urbana will remain in our budget. They will be included in the FY25 budget. They will be held in a fund in the Economic Development Division and Community Development Services, and they will be utilized as needed to meet targeted minimum levels of service. This is a 2-year project. At the end of 2 years, any funds that aren't used will revert back to the city, and that has been summarized in the memo that you've received. So I would ask Carly and Tim if you have anything else to report, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have just a few slides here that I thought we could go over in addition to what we presented last week. So again, as Mayor Marlin said, we are looking for a match commitment from the community to match the university's $500,000 to get to $1 million plus revenue guarantee to be able to present to the airlines. So we are looking at these 3 locations as opportunities to add direct nonstop service from Willard Airport with low-cost rates. As we briefly touched on last weekend, revenue guarantees are required essentially to get the service in your community, in your area. And these are ones, as Jack Penning had mentioned, had been done within the last 6 months. So just showing examples of other communities that are doing the same type of efforts themselves. We base the locations and our conversations with airlines on a variety of different factors, but certainly one of the factors for consideration regarding leisure is just the network of where these airlines fly. So this is just an example of some of the low-cost carriers, where they're based at, where they fly within the network. And as you can see, it aligns with the locations that we are seeking as part of this effort. Additionally, in that, we also use the data that we have and able to decide what we're going to discuss with the airline. So this shows demand here in our community for passengers per day each way. And as you can see, there is existing demand for some of the markets that we are talking about as part of this MRG. Just using Orlando as an example, we have 89 people traveling per day to Orlando. 5 of those are using Willard and 84 are not. So there is an opportunity to retain some of those travelers here in our community. Also important to note, out of the 84, the majority of those folks are traveling to Chicago and other big markets, not necessarily to our regional airports. And as Jack mentioned last week, Bloomington only gets 3% of our travelers. One of the other aspects that is taken into consideration, in addition to the networks, the data that we have is just this trend, and that is that business travel has not returned to the levels that it was before the pandemic. So this is certainly something that we know that the airlines are paying attention to. We're certainly paying attention to it, understanding travel days, times of the week, what that demand is going to look like, and one of the other reasons that we are exploring these leisure routes. And again, just wanted to show sort of how the MRG works. Once the pledges are made from the community, we then take that to the airlines and have conversations with them. Once an agreement is reached, those pledges are converted into cash, and then that's for a maximum of 2 years. And so these are some of the things that we're going to be having as part of our upcoming conversations with the airlines. And as I mentioned last week, part of our initial goal to get this pledge and this effort sort of aligned by April 1st is due to some of the conversations that we're going to be having at some upcoming conferences where we have the opportunity to sit down and have face-to-face conversations with the airlines. So I will end on this slide because I know we covered a lot last week, and happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? James?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the update. I see this has been changed a little bit on the slide we're looking at here from the one that was provided for us. I'm going to ask about how this works. So we have this guarantee each quarter. We look and see if the revenue guarantee was met. If it wasn't met, the first $500,000 that isn't met gets billed to the University of Illinois, correct? After that point, and the thing I'm trying to make sure I understand, let's assume that it's the way it's described in the thing that I received in my email, which is a billing for each quarter after that. If you get another $500,000 and we've contributed 50, that means we're 10%. So I would assume that each quarter that we don't meet the minimum revenue guarantee, that we would be responsible for 10% of the gap. Is that a fair way to describe that?
Correct. That is correct.
The other way to describe it, given what's drawn here, would be at the end of it, whatever is left over is going to be returned proportionally to how people contributed to it, right? So if we meet our goals for Urbana, that's going to be 10% of the 500,000 that's outside of the 500,000 from the U of I. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. Yes.
All right. The other thing I wanted to point out is I like this additional detail that you had for where the flights are going. it really seems to say that Orlando is the place that people want to be from this area. So I'm just curious why we're looking at Phoenix at all in that picture.
One of the main reasons is
I know it's where you live, so don't lead with that.
I don't live there.
That was Jack.
That was Jack. He lives in Tucson. So we need to target our markets based on the networks of the air carriers. So Orlando is our #1 market from a passenger size. Phoenix is down the list at number 13, and Vegas is number 4. And those are leisure destinations that are supported by, the many airlines we're pursuing in this initiative. But it is open for all airlines to consider. So that's why our markets are targeted in that way. But there are markets that are bigger than Vegas and bigger than Phoenix, but that doesn't align with the strategy we're pursuing here in securing a leisure carrier.
So in this first come, first serve basis that is described here, if somebody showed up and said, I think I can get a lot of people to go to Denver, would we accept that?
That is not currently offered in our incentive program.
Okay, thanks.
I might also note too that how this has worked in markets where they're successful is you get an initial route as part of the agreement, and then the hope is that you continue to expand to the other routes as well. So that is certainly always the goal of one market itself may come first, but we're trying to continuously add to the total list.
And then my last point would be, do we have any kind of assurance that when this 2 years is up, that we will see additional commitment from University of Illinois to go beyond 2 years? Because right now it just looks like we're looking at a 2-year shot and not looking to maintain this beyond that.
So the whole project could take up to 4 years, really. I mean, we're looking for those commitments here to go starting having conversations with the airlines and meeting. Our first one is coming up in May in Washington, D.C. at the Jumpstart Air Service Conference. We're not going to sign a deal in that conference. So, we're hoping to begin conversations and lead into late 2024 or even to 2025. The contract term for minimum revenue guarantee starts the day of service, and that's for a maximum period of 2 years. So that's how the layout of that commitment works. So it's not just 2 years from the date of the first meeting or something. It's the date of the inaugural flight.
Okay, but still, whenever it starts, it's 2 years after that.
Yes.
What do we have as far as a commitment beyond that 2 years?
Right now we're worried about this part of the project, this comes first, getting that initial interest and having those conversations with airlines to start one of these locations that we have incentives available to. So Las Vegas, Phoenix, or Florida are the initial outlined destinations that we are offering incentives to, and those are exclusive. So we don't have any other destinations on there for now. There's a one-time offer in terms of the money available for a minimum revenue guarantee. There's no promises made to the airline that there's going to be more coming at the other end of it, or that we're going to be ready to do it again in 4 years or 2 years or whatever that may be. This is just a one-time offer to build a relationship and get service here, to initiate service.
I'll note too, there are federal grants that are available. So we mentioned last week our DC effort. We do have a federal grant that we applied for, and as part of that total package, we're going to continue exploring those for all markets moving forward. So that is certainly an option of looking at how we support these additional efforts even beyond the 2 years.
Mary Alice.
So is it fair to say that since we're doing the revenue target, you're doing it quarterly, right? So we're basically saying they're going to make $125,000 every quarter? Is it just no?
No, that is a negotiated contract rate based on segment. So the cost plus all the operating costs that go into flying the route. Let's say it was to Orlando, and say that segment, we negotiated the rate and it's $10,000 each way. That is the revenue set on each segment. Say you fly, 100 segments in the first quarter, and they fall short of the revenue target, and that's aggregated over the quarter. You have to reimburse the airline for the shortfall. So it's there's no requirement that we have to spend the minimum revenue guarantee. That's all negotiated on the front end, and we work with our consultants on those numbers. We know what it costs to operate a flight based on other contracts that have been initiated over the country, and also the costs of operating certain types of airplanes. The airlines all fly different types of airplanes. Some may be more efficient than others, so that really comes down to what airline is interested, and then the negotiation from there, and we agree upon the rate of the flight, the cost of the segment, and any shortfalls are then reimbursed. So if it performs well, there's no requirement to give any money to the airline at all. And that's the ultimate goal of the airline, is to make as most money as possible.
So it sounds to me like there's some details that haven't been fine-tuned just because you don't know who you'd be partnering with, and those are going to change. So I guess my question to you is, if this does pass and you move forward and you start the negotiations, it would be good to have a follow-up with what that contract says to City Council so that we can know how those funds are going to be spent. We did have some people email City Council about previous carriers who have left Willard and concerns that it's going to be a short-term thing. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit to those concerns.
Can you be a little bit more specific as to what the questions
So
were?
United pulled out. I think they were there for, 18 months, roughly speaking. We used to have 2 carriers many years ago. And so I guess, do you know the reasons why the carriers pulled out of this market?
Well, United Airlines pulled out of the market. First off, they came in at risk without any incentives. So the airline was fully at risk when they started service here. So there wasn't a contract of this nature or any sort of revenue guarantees. So that was United's decision based on their profitability on the routes and how many people flew the service. They also went head-to-head with American to Chicago. So we had 8 flights a day to Chicago, and our market couldn't sustain that many passengers to Chicago every day. And there was very little loyalty transfer over to United, where our customer base was pretty used to flying American. So in the United sense, that's what happened there. But they did come in at risk, and they came in without any minimum revenue guarantee. The other airlines and the other deals that have happened in the past, there may be similar issues with those services, but those were in different chapters of time that the industry was different and traveler habits were different. So it's hard to correlate this effort to those efforts because there were different circumstances involved in the other airline agreements.
Okay. I do have one comment for you. Since the U of I is a partner in this, it'd be nice if there's free parking at the airport, because that's part of the reason people go to Bloomington sometimes.
Any more questions? Chandra?
So you mentioned United sort of left because they were duplicating American Airlines. Can you ensure, or I guess, will it be your priority to ensure that this new airline does not also have any routes the same as current American, so there's no way that they can not fulfill their seats?
We are federally prohibited from offering incentives on duplicate routes.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Could you comment, how big a mistake was it to close the flight school between the University of Illinois Flying Institute and Parkland College, I think also contributed, but I guess, is there any chance ever of bringing back the flight school to train pilots?
Parkland College owns and operates the flight school at Willard right now. And they have record enrollment and are a great contributor to the airline industry and certainly the challenges with the pilot shortages.
Oh, great. Well, tell them they're eligible for ice cream. Thank you.
Grace?
Thank you. In the presentation last week, I believe, you shared some things, and I think in the presentation about the tax revenue that comes to Urbana schools and city. I think it was about $1 million a year. And I was wondering if I could have some insight on how that works. Is there sales revenue per ticket, or is there only property taxes? I guess I'm just wondering how that tax structure works and if we would expect to see any tax revenue from increased flight routes.
So the information from that study was was overall economic impact of the airport existing and the flights that operate at the airport. So that's the circulating money that goes through the community as a result of the airport existing. You can forecast per seat into the market the economic impact of said seats, about $80,000 a year, and it results in more jobs in our community, and people live everywhere. So I think that's correlating directly what a flight to Florida would have in a direct tax benefit. I really can't speak to that. Maybe Carly can offer some insight on that.
But if you could go back to that one, so that's not tax revenue. That's what you're saying. That's indirect revenue generation from people coming and going is what those numbers are saying. That's not tax revenue, right?
Yes, and I'll follow up. So Jack, who was here last week, Valair Aviation, did this study, and this was, I can't remember if we touched on this last week too, but this is the impact of each new route per year. And Tim is doing a new study right now with Jack because those numbers were based on 2019. So we'll have 2023 numbers, or I'm sorry, not 2023 numbers.
These will be based on 2023 numbers, along with the traveler habits, our leakage, and other data points. We're working on that to be ready for these upcoming meetings as well in May.
I don't have the exact breakdown of the formula, but we can follow up with that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that if you could for next week, because I'm curious how that works, because in a sense, it doesn't make any more or less money if someone comes here flying in and out of Chicago or Willard, right? Like in that sense, in a community tax dollar, it's really not a difference. It's maybe a convenience or a benefit to Willard, but it's the same people coming in either way, right? I had other questions about for this resolution tonight. It looks like as we've gotten to, it's hard because we don't have the actual agreement that will be later negotiated with the details, but this one just for the city putting money aside in this Community Development Services Economic Development Division Fund. My question probably for the city is that's a city account, right?
That's correct. And according to our finance department, the money would be reserved with a purchase order within the Economic Development Division. It couldn't be used for any other purchase unless it was invoiced for this particular use.
And then we'd expect to be billed quarterly if the revenue wasn't met after the U of I's first $500,000?
Right.
Okay.
So if the U of I's first $500,000 is depleted, then the community contributors would be invoiced proportionate to what they've put in.
Thank you. And is there going to be any agreement on cost? We got another question about could a new airline undercut their prices so that they're not profitable because they know that they have that safety net?
I want to reiterate, this is not a subsidy. Minimum revenue guarantees are not subsidy. The airline has a vested interest to get to the fare that they need to have to be long-term sustaining in the market, and that's their goal. They take substantial risk, even with these incentives on the table, to come into a new market. There may be introductory fares to encourage people to interact with their brand, to try them out, to fly wherever they are offering, but the minimum revenue guarantee is not a subsidy, and introductory fares don't stay in a market. If they do stay in a market, it's probably not performing well. So the goal is to get the fare up to a normal standard level, certainly within the first year or sooner, and have that service be on its own 2 feet, if not from the gate, right out the gate. So it's not a subsidy.
Thank you. And then if I slip in one more, do you see any impacts with American Airlines as far as that expectation or fairness? Are they think doing well enough that that would be an okay arrangement?
I don't see any impact, and the reason I say that is we retain 20% of passengers here at our airport. Orlando traffic, Chicago market, a handful of those people go, like 30% of people go to fly Southwest out of Midway. So they're not, it's not competing with American and the service that they offer. I think there's some charts that showed, how many people fly to Orlando every day, which is 90 a day. We only retain 5 on American, so we're not pursuing anything that would conflict with American. We're essentially offering a service that people are driving to go secure elsewhere in our community. That's the goal. So no, I don't see a direct conflict with American at all.
Mary Alice,
I make a motion?
yes, you may.
I will move resolution number 2024-02004, resolution authorizing contribution to Community Minimum Revenue Guarantee, called MRG, for leisure air service at Willard Airport to City Council on the consent agenda.
And can I get a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Not discussion, but I feel compelled to throw in this bit of information, which I learned by serving on the Airport Advisory Board all these years. And parking at Bloomington Airport really isn't free because Bloomington Airport is supported by a property tax subsidy. And last I heard, it was to the tune of over $3 million a year. So property taxpayers in McLean County are now paying for to support the airport. We don't have a property tax support for the airport here. So one of the reasons they can offer parking, they don't have to charge for parking, is that it is being paid for in another way. But there is no such thing as free parking or free lunch, for that matter.
Any more discussion? James?
Yeah, I'm going to support this. Our community needs a world-class airport because we're a world-class university with a highly diverse workforce here. It's important for us to be able to hire and retain faculty to have a way to travel around the country, around the world from here. While this is a leisure proposal, getting more people, having more people see the convenience of flying in and out of Willard will help American. If people lose whatever barrier they have to flying out of Willard because of convenience, to go straight to Orlando or Las Vegas, whichever place they want to go. I think that's good for the airport, and what's good for the airport is, in the long term, is good for the community, because it is absolutely essential for us to go out and hire, the top minds of the world to come work here, that they see how they can travel once they're here, once they're based here, whether it's for their own leisure or whether it's for national or international travel for their research or their work. We got to do it.
Any more discussion? Grace?
Thank you. I'm still kind of in shock and disappointed to hear about to come to the correct understanding about the revenue generation here. Because I was really optimistic when I thought that was actual tax revenue from sales or property taxes. And now seeing that, also learning in here that it's University of Illinois owned, I wasn't aware of all that detail. So it seems like I would appreciate some more information on that. And I think some of the differences in lifestyle or situation are not lost on me here. I think that people who are most vulnerable aren't really impacted by, a leisure convenient flight to Orlando. I was really hoping to justify this, to say that it's an investment, to say that putting this money aside would be, look at how much we get in tax revenue each year. And I'm actually having a harder time justifying that give and take benefit here. So I would appreciate any more information you can share with that. Because again, I don't. If people are going to come here and spend money, that's wonderful. They can do that flying into another airport just as easily. And I don't mean to minimize it or minimize the convenience of that aspect or this resource, but I'm trying to justify a dollar equation here for why the taxpayer should be putting money into this. I also wanted to just feel compelled to state that I am a University of Illinois employee, not connected with this in any way, and we've had advice from our legal staff and talking to legal staff at the university that it is okay for us to vote on issues that we're not directly involved in that role at the university, but I did want to disclose that. Thank you.
Okay, if nothing more to be, okay. So, all in favor then
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that passes. Number 2, resolution number 2024. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be back to provide updates.
Okie dokie. We'll be looking forward to it. Now, right now we have resolution number 2024-02-005R, an ordinance approving an amendment to a redevelopment agreement, Icon Hospitality LLC, Urbana Landmark Hotel.
Thank you. I'm Kimberly Smith, Community Development Services Director. Am I in there?
Yeah.
With me is Harris Pervase and also Joseph Pryor, who will also be speaking. Council is being asked to approve an ordinance amending a redevelopment agreement with Icon Hospitality for the Hotel Royer. This amendment would extend the deadline for the redevelopment agreement and also has a provision for reducing the amount of the incentive in the event that the revised deadline is not met. The original redevelopment agreement was approved June of 2019. The basic terms were to include a reimbursement of $5.5 million for qualified expenditures that's defined in the redevelopment agreement that would not be given unless conditions were met, namely a certificate of occupancy would be issued, final approval for the property to open and operate as a Hilton Tapestry brand that has been received, and equity or permanent debt financing is also obtained for the balance of the expenses. There have been several extensions to the original agreement, with the most recent being February 29th, 2024 as the current date. Since the last extension, staff had the opportunity to meet with a representative from Hilton. Hilton remains committed to and enthusiastic about the Hotel Royer project. Staff recently has sought guidance from City Council members regarding their willingness to look at this amendment, and the general sentiment was support for a further extension and also support for a gradual reduction of the incentive. Therefore, the recommendation is to extend the deadline to December 31st, 2024, and also to include a reduction of $500,000 for any portion of each subsequent 3-month period that would go beyond the December 31st, 2024 deadline. Staff is also adding that the part of your packet was the Fourth Amendment, the one labeled Fourth Amendment to the redevelopment agreement. Specifically, Section 2 are the things I had just mentioned. If there are adjustments that the council is wanting to make, we will hear that and then bring that back to make the changes and then bring that back to you for approval. As I stated, I have members of Icon Hospitality right here, and they are going to walk you through the current condition.
Thank you, everyone. We wanted to showcase the extent of the renovation that has been completed at the Hotel Royer Tapestry Collection by Hilton. So we've prepared some before and after pictures of the construction to showcase sort of how far this hotel has come along. These are pictures of the exterior before the construction. These are pictures of the exterior after the construction. We've completely uplifted the facade, but kept the Tudor revival theme and the historic element of the hotel while upgrading it to a modern Hilton hotel. This is the before and after pictures of the lobby. On the left, you have the original lobby area that was also used as a breakfast space. On the right, we have our new, completely renovated lobby with our ADA compliant ramp behind it, as well as our front desk to greet guests as soon as they enter the hotel. On the left, we have pictures of the meeting rooms before the renovation, and on the right, we have the renovated meeting room pictures showing that all of the finishes, all of the fixtures, all of the material have been completely transformed and renovated in the hotel. These are more pictures of before and after of the meeting rooms, with the left being the prior and the right being the current after the renovation. Again, we have the corridors here on the left. These were the previous corridors, and then on the right, we've done a lot of electric, a lot of plumbing, a lot of HVAC work to make sure that the hotel is up to the standard of a Tapestry Collection by Hilton, but has all of the modern amenities that you would expect at staying at a hotel of this caliber. Here are some before pictures of the guest rooms, showing the older rooms and bathrooms of the previous Urbana landmark. And then these are our current guest rooms after the renovation. Completely transformed, all of the electric, plumbing, drain lines completely new, and all new finishes, all new fixtures, all new equipment. On the left, we have pictures of how the restaurant space looked prior to the renovation, and on the right, we have what the restaurant space looks currently. We wanted to retain that historic library element of the building, so we kept all of those books. We kept all of that, that culture, that history of this property, but at the same time, we wanted it to transform. We wanted to be more lively, so we have spent a lot of time with our architecture, our interior design team to help transform the space. This is the Camelot Hall. Here, the Great Hall / Camelot Hall has a lot of beautiful elements that we really wanted to retain and keep the history of this, this ballroom space. So that is our goal here. But to speak further to the renovation and the extension that we're asking for, the Hotel Royer is a historic 100-year-old property that has been meticulously renovated inch by inch by Icon Hospitality to a modern luxury boutique hotel. The hotel's heritage dates back to 1923. The hotel will offer a blend of timeless elegance and modern amenities, making it the perfect destination for travelers and locals alike. Icon Hospitality, as you've heard, is requesting for an extension of the completion date due to supply chain constraints, particularly with the elevators. We have come before council multiple times because our policy has always been to ask for the minimum time necessary for these extensions, which is why we've come in a piecemeal fashion rather than coming for one long extension at each time. The renovation project aimed at preserving the rich heritage and enhancing the guest experience has faced challenges beyond the control of the management team. Despite diligent planning and coordination, the hotel has encountered delays in securing essential elevator components and equipment necessary for the project's completion. These elevators are all completely custom made. We have 3 elevators that have a variety of pulleys, tractions, pumps, different cabin materials that are completely being updated, and there has been a global shortage in elevator equipment that we could not have accounted for that is holding the completion of this project. Icon Hospitality has renovated every inch of this property, including the 131 guest rooms, 8,000 square feet of meeting space, including the historic Great Hall, restaurant, kitchen, staging areas, bar, swimming pool, fitness center, back of the house, and mechanicals. Icon Hospitality has invested incredible resources into ensuring that every detail is given the utmost attention and care. Not during a single week has the renovation at this property stopped, despite all of the hurdles. Every week we've had our teams, our construction crews in the property making progress, as you can see. And we've included these pictures to showcase to the community the progress that has been made. The restoration of this property was an immensely challenging endeavor that most developers would not be willing to undertake. When we typically develop a hotel, we have maybe 6 or 8 different room types. In this property, we have well over 37. Well over, I was going to say over 30, but 37 different room types. So each room is unique. Each room is a different odd shape. So we have to make sure that all of our furniture, all of our equipment, all of our materials fit in each of those rooms. And with a historic building, whenever hurdles are encountered, we have to consult our architecture team, our interior design team, the Historic Preservation Committee, Hilton, our MEP consultants, our whole construction team, to make sure that we are doing the construction properly, that we are completing the construction as it is supposed to be completed. There's 2 separate buildings in this property. One building was constructed in the 1920s, and the extension was constructed in the 1980s, and neither have been meaningfully updated in over 40 years. The bulk of the renovation work was completed during the COVID-19 pandemic in a time that supply chain constraints and labor shortages have delayed all hotel construction projects across the country. The TIF incentive that the city of Urbana has committed does not materialize until the hotel actually opens. The city of Urbana has not put in $1 into this project as of yet. That is the developer's resources, the developer's investment. When the hotel opens, when the certificate of occupancy comes through, that is when the city of Urbana's incentive funds will materialize. And furthermore, those TIF incentive payments will come from the sales tax and the additional boutique tax that is being levied on this historic hotel. The Hotel Royer will open in the 2024 year. As the developer, it is our top priority to open this hotel this year as soon as the necessary elevator equipment becomes available. We believe that the penalty recommended of $500,000 for every 3 months delay creates undue hardship to the developer and jeopardizes the future success of the hotel. We are requesting that the City Council reconsider that amount and refrain from imposing penalties. We know that the city has demonstrated their support, and we would like the city to demonstrate their support continually for the business community and encourage investment in our city. Penalizing the developer for circumstances beyond their control could create a disincentive for future investment and hindering economic growth and development in the downtown Urbana area. A closed hotel costs us as the developer immensely. Every day that the hotel is not open results in additional expenses for the developer, including interest charges, utility expenses, labor and payroll expenses, insurance, property tax, and numerous other upkeep and holding costs, all without revenue. Adding additional penalty places undue hardship on the developer. We understand that the city of Urbana and the community has an urgency on completing this project, and we as the developer also have an urgency. So our recommendation was to lower the penalty amount to $100,000 per 3-month period beyond the December 31st, 2024 date. We feel that this reduction in the penalty articulates our commitment to getting this hotel project completed, but adds penalties that are more sustainable for the future success of this hotel. Icon Hospitality remains optimistic about the progress of the renovation and is confident that the current extension request is the final one needed to complete this project. We appreciate the patience and understanding of our guests and community members during this time. We are confident that the final result will exceed the expectations and uphold the legacy of this historic hotel for generations to come. And we thank you for taking your time to consider this request.
Okay, are there any questions of the presenters? Mary Alice?
Thank you. So I asked this question when I took the tour, but I think it is pertinent for the public to also know this. So one of the big slowdowns is the elevator parts. If the elevator was not an issue, how many months would you need to complete the project?
Good evening. Probably no more than 2 months.
So is the kitchen in place now?
All the equipment has been ordered. Pretty much all the plumbing and electrical is completed. So it's just a matter of installing. It's
So
just doing the installation.
So the elevators and the kitchen, and there's some rooms that still need to be finished, if I remember correctly, and then the pool.
Swimming pool, we only have the equipment. So when we were touring, most of the equipment was already there. It was just, and I think I mentioned that we cannot fill in the pool because we cannot leave it there sitting for long periods of time.
Okay, I think the equipment wasn't installed when I was there. Perhaps it was when other people were there.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
I think I mentioned that. Thanks.
Chris.
Thank you. You are going to get $5.5 million after completion of the project. The taxpayers will be on the hook for actually $6.9 million with the interest. So I have to ask on the behalf of the taxpayers, is there any chance that 80% of your employees working the hotel could be residents of Urbana and 20% of your employees working at the hotel could be African American?
I can speak to that. With hiring of a hotel of this size, our hotel hiring is done locally. Our staff that is in our hotels are local members of the Urbana community. So we are hiring local and minority contracting. During the construction was a priority for us to involve minority women and disadvantaged contractors. And when we are doing our hiring, that is going to be a priority as well.
James.
All right, thank you. I have to say, I got to tour the place in like the first week of July last year, and then I got to tour it 3 or 4 weeks ago. The difference was distinct. I mean, the first time I toured it, I could not see the vision. The second time I toured it, I could see the vision coming together. That made an impression on me. The question I need to ask is because there's been a couple of dates floated around for this extension. I think there were 2 of them, and the one that we've ended up on in the proposal is the end of the year, the December 31st date. Is that the date you guys need?
That is correct. The December 31st is the date that we're asking for in this extension, but our goal is to open as soon as we have all of our elevator equipment and we are ready to open. So our priority is always to open before, as soon as.
You're not, of course, bringing any money in. You're just spending money and paying interest until you are operating. So the moment you can open, according to the state fire marshal, and you have your people on board, you're going to open?
Exactly.
If we get a miracle of elevator repair and the elevator's all ready in July, you're going to be open in August?
We would love to open as soon as we physically possibly can.
All right,
as soon as we have our inspections approved and we have our certificate of occupancy to open, we would like to open.
Thank you.
Grace.
Thanks. Thanks for joining us and for the nice photos. I was wondering if we could have the full agreement. I don't know if that's maybe looking more towards Kimberly. I imagine we have had it before. No, what's in our packet looks like excerpts, right? Can I have the full agreement, especially like on page 17 here in this resolution, section 1, it says we're amending section 1.1 of the contract to change the extension from 18 months to 42 months, and just with a 10-month extension, just not seeing those adding up. So I just think it might be more clear if we could have a refresher of the full contract. Also, in the memo of the previous agreements, it talks about, the use of occupancy that the funds won't be provided until that use of occupancy, final approval for property stuff, those kinds of criteria. I just wanted to double check that those were in there. So I think it'd be easier if I could see the contract, and we've probably had it before, but I don't know where. And then I would also really need some clarification on how TIF comes into play here. I've heard conversations about TIF and bonds, and I would really like some clarity on that.
So the money is coming from Central TIF, and we also have Will, if you're able to.
Yeah, so the property is located in the Central TIF, and there's two mechanisms, well, two ways to think about it. There's the money going out of the city and the money coming back in to pay for that incentive. So there's been a couple different options talked about of how are we going to issue the $5.5 million to the developer. I think when this agreement was originally written, it talks about a general obligation bond, which is actually not a TIF bond. My understanding is with Elizabeth in Finance, the current expectation is doing some internal fund borrowing. So we borrow from other city funds, so we wouldn't necessarily go out for that. So that's the money going out. And it's how does the money come back in to repay for that? There's a couple different revenue streams. You have your TIF increment, the property tax. You have your sales tax on the room sales. You have the new boutique hotel tax on the room sales. And then you have food and beverage tax as well. So those are the revenues, a stream coming in to pay for those debt payments. Does that answer the question?
I'm still not entirely clear on TIF. It sounds like we're not entirely clear till we get there, right? We're borrowing the money and then paying ourselves back from taxes and TIF.
TIF is a portion of this incentive, but TIF alone was not sufficient to. TIF doesn't cover the entirety of the incentive. So TIF property taxes, the incremental property taxes, are a component of paying back that $5.5 million. The other component of that is the hotel motel sales tax and the boutique sales tax are the two primary ones. So TIF is part of the incentives from a financial side, but it's not the totality of the incentives.
Yeah, I would appreciate if we just have some clarity for next week, kind of what portion we expect to come from what places, because I'm still not entirely clear. And then there was another idea brought up about could that money go towards something else if there were any money reduced past the deadline. And it sounds like that's also related, that it's not necessarily cash in hand, although some may be, but it's bonds and TIFs and other sources. Right.
Mayor Marlin, you want to answer to that?
Can you repeat that question? I want to make sure I heard you right.
The questions about, there was a idea brought up in public comment about as we reduce the money, say past December, as we reduce it $500,000 or $100,000, there was the idea brought up, could that money go somewhere else or to support other businesses? And so I was just reiterating that here and saying that through this conversation, it sounds like not necessarily, if it's not cash on hand,
Correct.
We're doing other financing.
Yeah,
right?
we're not looking at a pot of we're not looking at a pot of $5.5 million. We would just borrow less if we had to.
Okay, I'm still confused because there is millions in Central TIF, right? Okay, so I'll look forward to learning more on that.
But this is not the only project in Central TIF.
So the way the deal incentive is structured is how we got to $5.5 million originally was that is the amount that's supported by the new revenue generated by this project. So to your question that any reduction of the incentive, that money doesn't exist and as far as this agreement goes until the project is completed. There's a separate set of TIF money that can be used for projects, but the way the deal was structured was the money that pays for that debt service comes from the property itself through the different revenue streams that it generates. So it's a little bit of both to your question. There is money in the TIF, but the money for this incentive comes from the particular project.
James.
So I'm gonna state something and I'm gonna ask a question. Since it sounds like, and this is how I understood it from the beginning over the last 3 years, is that the money is going to come from a general obligation bond, which is debt.
So that, yes, although the finance department.
But we may borrow the money from ourselves to save on
correct
interest, right?
Yeah.
And so paying that back is based on the revenue expectations, which includes regular hotel, motel, boutique hotel, food and beverage tax. And I'm guessing that when we talk about TIF, we're talking about the added capacity under the TIF district that the valuation of this property operating contributes to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, when the property is completed, it'll have a new higher assessed value, so the incremental property taxes.
So we're
from
not
that.
taking the other capacity of TIF to do things in downtown to do this. We're planning on the capacity that this improvement of the property, the higher property tax it pays, which goes into the TIF under agreement with the participants in the TIF, to satisfy that debt, whether it's our own internal debt or a general obligation bond.
Correct.
Is that
Yeah,
a good summary
the
of it?
project
So,
will
so
pay
we're
for
not
itself.
going to other existing TIF money to do this project.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Grace.
I'm just balancing that with the letters from the applicant that talks about the TIF incentive doesn't materialize until it opens. So I was still confused on if we're pulling out of central TIF or not.
So I'm trying to think of a different way to word this. Yes and no. So the project. So the first step is the city issues the debt, wherever that debt comes from, either other city funds or general obligation bonds. So that incentive goes to the developer, and then the city receives funds from the business taxes generated, motel tax, the boutique hotel tax, property tax for the TIF. So that's the money coming in. So that's conceptually how the deal is structured. I think the statement by the business that is a TIF fund, I think, TIF is a complicated project, and this project is more inclusive to TIF, so that's correct, but it's more than just the TIF. It's not exclusively the TIF. So that's how the particular deal is structured. I think, in terms of other monies, I think, I don't quite know exactly how to answer that particular question.
What we can do is delineate all this out in our memo for next week, but also I believe Harris wanted to say something as well.
I can clarify my comments on this. I'm not entirely sure on how the interworkings of the TIF work from the government's perspective, but I was saying materialize in that we do not receive any incentive or any payment until we open, is my meaning with that statement.
Mary Alice, could you take the chair for a minute?
I will take the chair. The chair recognizes Sharice.
I do have a question, and this is a question I asked Joseph when I was there for the tour as well. What is your plan B if, in fact, the kitchen equipment and such is not there by December?
So our kitchen equipment is not really our main concern or our main problem. That'll be the elevator. We, based on all the agreements that we have the elevator company, we should have all the equipment sooner than the end of the year. Kitchen should be in place within a couple of weeks.
Within a couple of weeks? So you know for sure that
A couple of weeks meaning could be 4 or 6 weeks.
Okay, so that's not a couple of
Right.
weeks.
A few weeks.
Few weeks. Okay. I was just wondering if you how that particular you're opening as a kind of a luxury hotel, and that will be without food service if there's no kitchen put in.
So we need to have our food and beverage portion completed in order for us to open.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's why I was wondering with your food and what your, you've waited for 2 years or something for the kitchen stuff to come in, and that's still on order, and you're calling the 800 number and asking where your stuff is?
Right. So no, we have received a large number of the equipment.
Mhm.
We're waiting for a few inspections. All the equipment should be in place within these couple weeks. And it's just a matter of installing everything and passing all the health department and all the fire suppression inspections.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like the chair back?
I don't know. Yeah.
I relinquish the chair to Sharice.
Okay. All right. Any more, Mary Alice?
I was going to make a motion if that's okay, just so that we can have it on the discussion. I'll move resolution number 2024-02005R, an ordinance approving an amendment to redevelopment agreement for Icon Hospitality LLC, the Urbana Landmark Hotel, amending the penalty from $500,000 to $100,000, not $1,000.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion. James?
Yeah, I was wanted to have a conversation about changing the penalty rather than reading it right into the record. But what I was going to suggest was the amount change seemed like a reasonable suggestion, but I was going to suggest that the frequency be every 2 months at that point if we're going to reduce the amount. But that was the only thing I was going to suggest. I'm not gonna fight that if that's where everybody else is. I do agree that it's reasonable to discuss reducing the penalty. I just wanted to talk about whether the frequency would be the same.
Mary Alice?
I just wanted to get it on the floor so we could have a discussion. So maybe it was a different way, but I always thought that we had to have a motion on the floor for a discussion to that except. I'm open to the conversation, to whichever general direction we go.
Chandra?
It sort of sounds like to me like they think that, trying to figure out how to phrase it. The extension they're asking for now is to the end of the year. And they seem fairly confident that they're going to open this year, within 2024. We heard them say it. So, I mean, why even bother with changing the penalty amount if you're for sure going to open in 2024?
So the reason is that the elevator equipment is not in our control. It is in the control of the manufacturers and the global supply chain shortage for all the elevator equipment. That is what they have told us from the elevator companies, and that's what they've assured us. We want to ensure that that if something, God forbid, does happen, that we are not in a situation that's going to destabilize the hotel with a drastic penalty. So we're planning ahead, and we're planning for the worst case scenario with this discussion of the penalty.
So, and speaking of planning ahead, like if the elevators were such a big portion of opening the hotel, when did you start, looking into, fixing or renovating or repairing the elevators? It probably would have been on my day two
Yeah, it was our top priority from the beginning. The issue was that these elevators were very complicated. There were legacy systems. There was multiple studies that had to be done, multiple teams involved, collaboration from fire, life safety, electric, plumbing, architects, design. So it was not something that we could order right away or materials that were in stock. These are custom elevators that require numerous components, different pulleys, tractions. So we had started work on this from the beginning. But what had occurred is that after all of these things were completed, that many of the items that we needed had shortages. Were taking very long lead times to produce.
And then sort of to follow up on what Grace had asked about the months, is that 42 months in totality since the beginning? Or is that 42 months of extensions?
I believe that would be totality.
Mary Alice, could you take the chair again?
I will take the chair, and the chair recognizes Sharice.
Okay, my question is basically regarding the elevators. Am I correct in understanding that you actually had to have the parts machined or made to replicate or to match up with the way the elevators are? I think I asked that question on the
Yes,
tour.
in some cases, this was the case in some of the parts, since they are specific to this particular type of elevators.
So the problem with the elevators is that they just don't make those parts anymore, and so those parts had to go be specially made.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to understand that.
I can relinquish the chair.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Well,
I'll take it. Chris?
I just want to ask the council, penalties are punishments for deliberate wrongdoing. Do we have any evidence that this project was unnecessarily, intentionally, and deliberately delayed for no darn good reason? Do we have any evidence of that?
Grace?
I was planning to say some other things. I'll move on that point of Chris bringing up. I would say that, no, I don't think it's, anything intentional. And I would think there's also a difference between punishment and incentive. I could see it as an incentive, and I think that 100,000 instead of 500,000 per 3-month period, or 2 or 4, whatever number of months sounds like a reasonable compromise. I think an extension makes sense. I've heard a lot of changing things in some of these 2x2s about, well, let's do a study and see if it makes sense to give more money, and then let's see about giving less money, and then let's see about not having any timeline requirement whatsoever for completion. I think we've been a little all over the place. I think that this makes sense. I think that the community really wants to see this open. I don't see a benefit in pulling out now. I don't think that increasing or reducing the funding or changing the timeline that's unrealistic is going to be helpful here. I agree with having that timeline, and I hope this is the last one. We've said that the last extensions were the last ones, so I can also see a little bit of that monetary incentive or kind of compromise that we could agree on, and having some kinds of consequences and incentives to finish rather than punishments. I would think of seeing how this is money that we're contributing. I could go either ways with it, but I think having a deadline and having the understanding, and I think the common thing that we're both working towards here is having it finished and open as soon as possible and being a benefit to the community. I think that's all I had to say now. I might have forgot some, but thanks.
Mary Alice?
So when I was having a conversation about this with staff and so forth, my main point was ask for the time you need, because I don't want to be back here again. I think you guys want to see it open. I know it's bleeding your pockets. I know you want to see it open. We want to see it open. The public wants to see it open. So mine was an incentive. That was the basis of me saying there's going to be a penalty, because I want you to ask truly for what you think you need so that it can get done and everybody can move forward and we can open the hotel.
I would have to agree with Mary Alice on that. Instead of piecemealing 5 or 6 months or 9 months or 10 months, if you need another year, just ask for another year. That's my feeling regarding the penalty thing. I kind of agree with Grace too. It's incentive. As my incentive wouldn't be $100,000, it would be $150,000. I think that's a great incentive. 500 may be a little bit too much, but sometimes you can pass that on to the people that are taking their time getting you your stuff too. Ask for a discount. But if that's basically my piece in that. Chris.
Point of order. So are we going to need to vote on whether we're reducing it to 100,000?
It was amended with the motion.
Yeah. So, so it's still all one thing?
Yeah, that's
then?
why I gave Mary Alice a hard
Okay.
time. She amended it as she moved.
Mary Alice?
Okay, so this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to pull my motion, if my second is okay with it, and I'd like to ask if we can take a straw poll on the amount. We have 150, we have 100 every 2 months. I'd just like to take a straw poll, and then we can have the full motion. Is that kosher?
Yeah, so long as you're pulling the motion off the floor, we can take straw poll to gauge. And I would do them separately, like the length of time and the dollar amount, just for clarity.
All right, we'll divide the question. All right, so
And I will agree as second. I think I seconded.
Okay, all right, so we're pulling the motion.
Okay.
So now we need to divide the question. Do we need a motion to divide the question? We do, don't we?
Are you wanting a straw poll? Because there's no question on the floor.
That's true, you're right.
Okay, so straw poll. Let's who wants? I'll start with James's idea, which is to minimize, to take away instead of it
So I
being
was
3
gonna
months,
suggest
every 2 months.
A penalty of 100,000 every 2 months.
Every 2 months. Can we get a straw poll on who thinks that's better than 3 months, or? The time. Okay, every 2 months. If you feel like every 2 months would be sufficient, a thumbs up or thumbs down. I can't see James's.
It fails.
It's 3 yes and 3 no. So that fails. So we're going to stick to every 3 months.
Okay.
Okay. $100,000 penalty. Thumbs up or down? Okay,
it
and
fails.
that passes, I guess.
No, it fails.
It's still tight.
3 up and 3
Okay.
down.
150,000 a month.
A month? Or
I mean, every
2 months?
3 months. Sorry, 150 every 3 months.
Got it.
Sandra? You can do sideways. Neutral or, well, it's still 4 to 3.
4 to 3.
4 to 2, rather. So we're going to go with 150, which is still less than 500 every 3 months.
All right, can I say the motion now with the changes? Okay. I move for approval, resolution number 2024-02005R, an ordinance approving an amendment to a redevelopment agreement with Icon Hospitality, LLC for the Urbana Landmark Hotel with the change of the amount from 500,000 to 100,000.
150,000.
150, thank you. It's getting late, guys.
And can I ask for one more change in that? And
Yeah.
with that it be called an incentive and not a penalty.
If it's called an incentive, though, that means that we're paying.
Okay, it'll be called a penalty. I know semantics, tomato. Hey, they do it in school.
I don't know if we have a second.
Second.
Okay. So, it was moved by Mary Alice and seconded by James with those amendments to be made. Can I get a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And it passes.
Regular.
Okay. Thank you. lady and gentleman.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 2024-02-005. Ordinance repealing Urbana City Code, Chapter 2, Article 4, Division 5, Section 2-95, Market at the Square Advisory Board. And we have Kim.
I would like to introduce Brian Heaton, who is our market coordinator.
Hey.
Good evening.
Pull the microphone closer.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Not used to doing this. So I think some of you, I met in some 2x2s back in August with Stephanie McMahon. We came around to talk about this. So the Market at the Square Advisory Board has not been meeting since I think the last meeting we had was December 2021. And we've been holding kind of all vendor meetings, and those have been kind of functioning in its place. So, sorry, I'm a bit nervous. So we'd like to kind of dissolve the board in an effort to give all our vendors an opportunity to have a say in how the market's run. The meetings have been pretty successful. They've had really high attendance. We just had one in November, and I think we had something like 42 vendors attend that one, which is, I don't know, like 5 or 6 times the amount of vendors that we would normally have at a market advisory board. So.
We also have a graphic to show you that if you look since COVID, we are on a pretty straight trajectory to pre-COVID levels. So this is also to show you that the market continues to function without that board.
Yeah, so, sorry, I'm still on. So this year we registered about 220 vendors. Prior to COVID, for pretty consistently the 4 or 5 years prior to COVID, we only registered 203. And we had more vendors participate on a monthly average this season than we did in previous seasons. So yes, the market seems to be functioning pretty well.
Mayor.
Just wanted to give a little more historical perspective. The Market at the Square Advisory Board was established in early or late, around 2010 or so, 2011? 2012, somewhere around there. I, as a council member, I served on as the city council representative to the board. In my recollection, and I believe it's true, the board was basically formed to get input from vendors. There was at that point some conflict among the vendors in terms of the focus of the market. We were doing the strategic planning for the market, and the board was set up to try to get input from a wide variety of people. It was set up with, I believe there are 9 seats on the board. It's one of the larger boards and commissions that we have. I can tell you it's extremely difficult to keep those seats filled, especially in this day and age. And the board is one of those ones that was set up with very specific requirements. So you had to have a city council rep, you had to have a rep from the growers, you had to have a rep from the craftspeople, you had to have a community member. And to find someone to fit each of those particular criteria has been increasingly difficult. And things have changed a lot since that board was set up. They're no longer doing the strategic plan. The market is functioning really, really well right now. And most importantly, Brian has been able to bring in every voice who wants to. All the vendors now have a voice, if they want, into the operation of the market, and not just a few people on this advisory board. So the board has outlived its purpose. Bottom line. And that's why we're recommending it be dissolved.
Any more questions for?
Because there's something better has replaced it.
Okay. Chris?
Brian, was 42 in person?
So the end of season meeting was conducted over Zoom.
Okay.
Which is kind of a huge advantage because we have vendors coming from as far away as like Effingham and Far East. So everybody can participate. They don't have to drive any farther than, their couch.
Right. So, okay, that's Zoom. That's pretty good. What I was told was that what's needed is these, like, just two giant meetings, one at the beginning, one at the end. I think we were talking about this in the 2x2, but one at the beginning, one at the end. And talking to some of the vendors, they just want 2 minutes of time. I don't know if you did this, but they wanted 2 minutes of time. Everybody gets to talk, and just for 2 minutes.
Yeah, so at the latest meeting, I had gotten that feedback at the market. And so we kind of, it wasn't quite open comment like we had here tonight, but I would present my position or the city's position and then invite feedback from the vendors. And it went pretty well. We didn't have too many people participate on all the topics, probably because they just liked what I was saying. But, you know, it was good because we did have people kind of support and reiterate. It worked out pretty well. There's probably some refinements that need to be made to the plan for that. But yeah, I think it's a great way to get feedback, especially in front of the group of vendors, as opposed to just hearing from each particular vendor as I go through the market on the weekends.
Any more comments? Grace?
Thank you. And Brian, right? Nice to meet you. And you're a city employee and manage the market, is that right?
Yes, that's true.
Okay, nice. Great to meet you. So it sounds like doing away with this because we have an alternative option, these all vendor meetings that are pre and post season, is that right?
That's correct.
Is there other communication throughout the season if a vendor wanted to get a hold of you or the structure of the market for some reason?
Sure. We also, so I'm out there every Saturday, so they can get me that way. They can also email me, phone call. So I think I'm pretty accessible as far as if vendors have a problem or need to see me. I'm more than willing to like meet with them or give them a phone call, whatever.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I will move ordinance number 2024-02005, ordinance repealing Urbana City Code Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 5, Section 295, Market at the Square Advisory Board onto the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mary Alice and seconded by Chris. Discussion. Mary Alice.
So I was the chair of this committee when I first came on to city council, and I will say that there were some people who always came from the board, but there were obvious gaps of people who did not come. And so I think that opening it up to all of the vendors at the beginning and at the end of the farmers market season, I think is a good plan. We often had people come up and complain about one certain thing, but I'm sure that there's other comments that people can have. Brian is always at the market. I see him on Saturday mornings. I know the vendors know who you are, so they know where to find you. So I'm in support of this.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, so all in favor of,
Vote is an ordinance.
Oh, it's an ordinance.
But it's
It
not
is an
final
ordinance, you're right.
action.
Oh, it's not final action.
Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
It doesn't need to be roll call because it's committee of the whole. So it's not final action to forward items from committee to council.
Okay, so.
You can
there
do voice
go.
vote.
So we can do a voice vote. All in favor of ordinance number 2024-02-005? Aye or nay?
Aye.
Are there any opposition? Is there any opposition? Okay, and that passes.
All right. Thank you all. Market opens May 4th this year, so expect to see you out there.
Thank you. Number 4. Ordinance number 2024-02-010, an ordinance approving a major variance, Bobcat Duplex at 408 West Main Street, case number ZBA 2023, MAJ 05. And Marcus Ricci is here to inform us about this.
Good evening, committee. For this case, council is being asked to approve a major variance to reduce the required front yard along McCullough Street from 20 feet 4 inches down to 5 feet to allow the construction of a duplex on a small corner lot at 408 West Main Street in the R4 zoning district. This is the location of the property at the northeast corner of McCullough and West Main. You have Canaan Missionary Baptist Church down the road a couple parcels. This is the proposed site plan that was submitted with the application. You have McCullough and Main at the bottom. You can see here where the property line is actually at least 10 feet east of the typical location, which is usually the interior edge of the sidewalk. The proposed house would meet the setback requirement along Main Street. It would actually be 5 feet further back from Main Street than the previous house was. So in that case, it would actually make a nonconformity of the previous building now conforming. This bit that you see going past that setback line is actually an open porch. So that's allowed to encroach into a required front yard. This black dotted line here is the current 20-foot 4-inch required setback line. And then the yellow is the actual yard reduction that's being requested so that the new required yard would be here, 5 feet from the property line. And there would be an access drive going along the north property line to the parking area to the east. Not that it is required or obligated, but this is the rendering that was submitted with the application. It is simply one possible design result from the proposed site plan. Looking northeast from the corner and east from McCullough. You are not approving any sort of designs, you're simply approving the variance, but with the one condition that staff are recommending, that the site plan be a condition that's followed with general conformity. On January 17th, the Zoning Board of Appeals reviewed and unanimously voted to recommend that council approve this major variance with the condition that construction must be in general conformance with the attached site plan. And staff agree with that recommendation and request that the item be placed on City Council's consent agenda. That is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions. Mr. Fell was not able to be here tonight due to illness, but he will be available next week at the council meeting.
Grace.
Thank you. Okay, Marcus, I'll try and make this quick. If you could just help me understand some of the highlights. I went through here, but a few pieces I still need to make a little more sense of. So it seems like the previous house here had a similar layout, right? So there's not like a site visibility issue of beyond what was already there, was already similar footprint.
Correct. This one is actually a smaller footprint. It's a 2,000 square foot house, but it's 2-story, so it's got a smaller footprint than the previous house did.
Okay, and it seems like an important piece here is that their property line is kind of unique, right? That the property line itself is set back from the sidewalk and the road, so that 5 feet of yard is not 5 feet from the street because the property line's already set back further. Is that right?
Correct, correct. So the perceived setback is larger than the technical legal setback.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Alice.
I just want to confirm, is that to say that if the property line was at the sidewalk, that they wouldn't need a variance?
No, they would need less of a variance, and it might even be a minor variance rather than a major variance.
And approximately how much, do you know?
I'm thinking it turned out to still be like 10 feet because the.
I know both sides because it's on a corner.
Right, well, and also because for this zoning district, the required setback is the average of all of the houses on the block. So all of them would have still been as far back as they are, but the maximum setback from the property line would max out at 25 feet.
Okay, that was my next question in
Right.
terms of the block face and the houses. I mean, that's a pretty old area in Urbana.
Yes,
Perhaps maybe one of the first areas in Urbana.
pretty old, yes.
Pretty old. Okay, thank you.
I think their variance would have been like 5 feet less because it would have maxed out at 25.
Any more questions, comments for Marcus? Entertaining a motion?
I'm just going for all of them today.
Yes.
No, all right. I'm going to put this on the consent agenda. Ordinance number 2024-02010, ordinance approving a major variance for Bobat duplex? Bobat duplex at 408 West Main Street, case number ZBA 2023 MAJ 05.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mary Alice and seconded by Chris. Discussion. Mary Alice.
So I just kind of wanted to let the public know, I generally don't like these major variances, but I do think that this parcel is very small, and we are quite fortunate that somebody is willing to develop it and not alter really kind of the character of that neighborhood. And in addition, one of the neighbors also sent us public input that they were in support. So I just want to let the public know why I am in support of this.
Any more questions for Marcus or comments? James?
Yeah, I will say that I would normally be cautious about a duplex on a lot this size, but in looking at the street and where this is in the neighborhood, there's an apartment building immediately to the west and a lot of development to the east. So I don't think it's particularly, if it was like 3 blocks further west, I would have a harder time with this because that's the real historic part of that neighborhood. So I am going to support this.
Okay, if there is nothing further, then all in favor to move to city council?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Next, we have ordinance number 2024-02-009, an ordinance amending the Urbana zoning map, Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District, plan case number 2482 M23, 2 lots north of East Park Street along North Cottage Grove Avenue.
Okay, good evening. This is pretty straightforward, so I'm going to be brief. This is council's being asked to approve a rezoning or zoning map amendment for 2 parcels owned by the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District. Those are outlined in sort of the coral on the overhead map. As you can see, these 2 parcels, just looking at this overhead, they're part of sort of UCSD's larger campus. The reasoning for this rezoning is that those, for whatever reason, are zoned R3 residential. They've never had any residential on them. UCSD has owned and used them for decades. So, as you can see here, part of their solar panel, or part of the solar panels there are zoned R3 for whatever reason. So again, this would bring those parcels in alignment with the rest of UCSD's campus. I did want to point out, if you watched the Plan Commission or read the Plan Commission minutes, there's a little bit of discussion about how the existing solar panels would fit into the new zoning district. So we were incorrectly referring to them as a solar farm, which is defined in our zoning ordinance as a principal use solar energy system. So that's like something where you're putting energy onto the grid for sale. This is actually a solar array, which is permitted in all districts. So that's all good. All of that discussion was fun, totally unnecessary. That concludes my report. Rick Manner from UCSD is here if you have questions for him. Thanks.
James.
Thank you. So if I get this straight, A solar array is when you're doing it for the purpose on your property that you're using the power for. In this
Correct.
case, taking care of our water.
Well, actually, this one is used for MTD's hydrogen bus station across the street, but yes,
All right.
it's not being sold on the grid.
Okay, thanks.
Mary Alice.
So this one perplexed me. My question is why? You have to go through this whole process when we legally allow you to use the land as you're using it now, so why do it?
Just, I mean, for consistency. Rick, if you want to speak to it more.
So we're working on sprucing up our entrance. The Northeast plant's been operating 100 years, so we're going to have another round of open houses this fall. So Mayor Marlin's previously said the tours of the sanitary district is the most interesting tour you've probably never been on. I fully endorse that thought, and so please come by. We're going to try and improve the entrance also for just getting people in and out of the plant better. People who have never driven there before don't know to make a slight right to go into our admin building. So while we were looking at doing that, we had to put up a sign. To put up a sign legally, we needed to look at things. We found out it was actually a vacated road. So we started talking to the planning department. They said we need to clean up this, that, and the other thing, and that's all that we're doing.
So the impetus to do this work is to put a sign up. Is that correct?
Pretty much. Believe it or not. But anyways, again, we're just cleaning up in terms of what's going on. Obviously, that's been a part of the sanitary district for a long time.
Well, I'm glad that the staff found that there's nothing morally wrong with you. That's what the application says, that there's
Yes.
nothing morally wrong with this.
We're pleased with that too.
Thank you.
And we thank them for cleaning this up and working on these things. We also did a few things to improve the park right-of-way access as well. And so we appreciate their time and where you've got an awful lot going on, and appreciate all your time for listening to all this.
James.
So just quickly, if we didn't do this, there would have to be a variance to put the sign up?
I think we just sneak in the sign without telling
So one way or
anybody.
another, we'd be doing something and might as well just get it right?
Correct, yes.
Could you take the chair for a minute?
I will take the chair. The chair recognizes Sharice.
The question I have is, how did this get by the zoning board in the first place?
I have no clue.
Okay.
I think I could help a little bit. Remember, the district's been there for 100 years. At one point in time, Hickory actually extended into what is now currently the part of the district. And so I think there was a residential neighborhood that was there back in the 1920s. It could well be that it looks like, if I look at that, the backyard of one of the homes actually did extend into that area. So historically, there might have been some plans for residents that close to the sanitary district operations. I don't know that anybody actually ever built there, so I think it was just zoned that way at one point in time, never changed, never corrected, to account for what's actually going on there.
Okay, that explains a lot. All right. I'll take the chair back now, Mary Alice.
All right, and I relinquish the chair back to Sharice, and I'll make a motion if the chair is open to one.
I'm open to one.
All right, I will move on consent agenda. Ordinance number 2024-02009, ordinance amending the Urbana zoning map, Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District, plan case number 2482M23, 2 lots north of East Park Street along North Cottage Grove Avenue.
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna give that one to James. I'm gonna give it to James. He's been dying to second something. Okay. Is there any more discussion regarding this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Resolution number 2024-02-006R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement, First Followers, Choto, operating PY 2023. And we have Brendan here to give us the deets.
Good evening, everyone. So the next 6 items on your agenda all relate to the Community Housing Development Organization certification and agreements for program year 2023. The order was a little messed up on your agenda. So there is a memo. It's on page 187. It was just put in the reverse order. So if you're looking for that in your packet, that's where the memo is located. But all of the items are relating to the same topic. So I'll start by just explaining what is in the packet tonight and what you'll be voting on. So there are 2 resolutions to certify Habitat for Humanity of Champaign County and First Followers, respectively, as community housing development organizations of the Urbana Home Consortium. The next 2 resolutions are to approve project funding agreements with both Habitat and First Followers. And then the last 2 resolutions are to approve operating funding agreements with Habitat and First Followers for program year 2023. So just to start with a brief overview of this funding, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development provides project and operating funding to certified community housing development organizations for the creation of affordable rental and homeowner housing units. So the funding is that HUD makes available is broken into 2 pots. Again, there's the project funding, which can be used for hard costs associated with housing construction or renovation. HUD requires that a minimum of 15% of our annual home allocation every year is set aside for CHODO project funding. So in the 2023-2024 fiscal year, the minimum CHODO set aside that we budgeted for was $116,851. Operating funding can be used to support staff salaries and other soft costs that are incurred by the CHODO while they are developing affordable housing in Champaign County. So CHODO operating funding is subject to a cap by HUD of 5% of our annual home allocation. So for this fiscal year, the maximum amount of operating that we have available to offer is $38,950. And again, that's because of that HUD cap. So we budget home CHODO funding, both project and operating funding, each year during our annual action planning process. And then on an annual basis, we make this funding available to support affordable housing projects in Champaign County. So in the 2023 funding cycle, which is what you are reviewing tonight, both Habitat for Humanity and First Followers submitted requests for project and operating support. So there's a certification process. Again, as I mentioned, in order to be eligible to receive this funding, organizations must be certified as community housing development organizations, or CHODOs. So HUD provides some requirements that we have to follow in making the determination as to whether these organizations qualify. So there's a number of criteria. The organizations must provide housing to low-income households. They must meet certain financial accountability standards as defined by HUD. They must have at least 1 year of experience as a housing developer. They must provide a process by which low-income residents can advise on agency projects and policies. They must have nonprofit status, and at least 1/3 of their board must be made up of low-income residents. So that's the certification process. We have determined through our review that both Habitat for Humanity and First Followers do qualify for CHODO certification and are eligible to receive CHODO funds under the HUD regulations. So now I'll just provide a brief summary of the awards that we are proposing in this year's funding package. So Habitat for Humanity submitted 4 project proposals. These are for new construction of homeowner housing. 1 of the projects will be in Urbana and 3 will be in Champaign. And each of these addresses, these new housing units, will be subject to a 10-year affordability period, meaning that for the next 10 years, the residents must be occupied by a low-income family. And again, this is for new construction of homeowner housing. So here are the specific addresses where they will be building their habitat builds. So again, you see the recommended project and operating funding. We keep the operating support consistent at $6,500 per address. Again, that's because we're subject to that pretty strict cap from HUD, so we can't offer more than $38,000 total in operating funding. So for each address, we keep that $6,500 consistent. And then you'll see $30,000 in project funding for 1210 West Dublin and 1010 West Maple, 511 West Beardsley in Champaign, and 313 Edgebrook in Champaign. You see are a little bit higher. That's because Habitat's request for those two addresses was higher. The lots were not cleared when they were transferred to Habitat, so there's an additional cost to clear the lot of trees. So they requested slightly more funding for those two addresses to help defray the cost of clearing the trees on that property. First Followers submitted one project request. This is for renovation of a rental housing unit that is located in Champaign, and this project will also be subject to a 10-year affordability period, meaning for the next 10 years, the units must be rented to low-income households. That address is 701 North Prospect in Champaign, and again, you see we keep the operating amount consistent at $6,500 and the project support at $30,000 for that project. So just a brief overview of project timeline. So both agencies are ready to hit the ground running once these funding agreements are approved. Construction will begin this winter and spring of 2024. Each of these projects will be completed by spring of 2025. So I'll open it up to any questions, but I do just want to acknowledge Marlon Mitchell, the Executive Director of First Followers, and Chad Hoffman, the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity, are both with us here tonight. And I just want to extend my thanks to them for the incredible work that they're doing, the time that went into the proposals that they submitted, and just the really high quality work that they have done providing affordable housing in our community. It's a huge lift, and they do a really good job. So I just wanted to acknowledge them, and then also they're here if you have questions that they can answer.
Chris.
Thank you. Does this cover the whole cost of construction?
No, it does not cover the full cost of construction. So home funding is designed by HUD to be essentially gap financing. It's not intended to provide full support. So just for some context, each Habitat home is about $199,000 to build in total. So again, that $30,000, it's gap financing. There are other funding sources that Habitat utilizes. Same for First Followers. Their total renovation is about $70,000. So the $30,000 is just a piece of that.
Thank you.
James.
And just for clarification, home funding is a resource for the county, and we're operating this, so that's why we're approving it, even though most of this is in Champaign.
That's correct. So this is our home consortium funding, so it has to be spent county-wide. So year by year, it kind of depends which projects are in Champaign versus Urbana. This year, again, there are the 4 of the total projects are in Champaign, and then 1 will be in Urbana, and that varies from year to year.
Mary Alice.
Were there other projects that were submitted that did not get funding?
No, all of the projects that were submitted are receiving funding.
And I assume that there's a group that covers the different entities within the county that review the applications?
Yes. There's a committee of the 3 consortium members: City of Champaign, City of Urbana, and Champaign County.
All right. Thank you.
Grace.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentations and for our partners doing this work. Appreciate you being here tonight, especially. Braden, I was wondering if you clarify some of the timelines for me in the packet, pages like 83-ish or something. So it talks about, page 83 says that the funds are for the period through June 30th, 2024, right?
We're committing them this fiscal year, so that it's a little confusing because it's for home CHOTO funding. They go by program years, which is slightly different than our 2-year 2024, 2025 fiscal year. It's the program year. So this program year funding has to be committed before June 30th, but then they are able to have until next spring to complete the projects.
Okay, and then, because page 84 says something about the monies granted shall be expended by June 31st, 2026.
Yes, that would give them time to finish by spring 2025. They have until 2026 to spend the funding. It has to be committed this year, but it can be spent. There's some flexibility there.
Okay, I don't know if I'm making sense of that, but I think it might be
So,
me.
and maybe it'll help. So again, home funds can just roll over from year to year, so HUD doesn't impose a strict date deadline. Usually for development projects, they'll give you 2 to 3 years to, once you commit the funding, to actually have it spent. So there's some flexibility there. Oh, and
I think I understand the question. You may step up.
yeah, you can use the microphone.
Yeah, to a microphone, please. Thank you.
And I just talked to Marlon too. So his project will be done this fall or this year. Our projects will all be done by spring of 2025. So I think that's what Braden put in the plan. We really have until 2026 to spend the funds if we would need to. We don't forecast that being the case, and neither does Marlon.
Okay, thank you.
James?
Do we need a motion to extend?
Okay.
Can I make a motion? I have a reason for it.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
I move that we extend the meeting until 10:40.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Oh, I'm going to tell you what my
Aye.
reason
Aye.
Oh, huh?
Can I discuss it?
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, discuss it.
All right, my reason
Sorry.
for this is I would also, my intent is to hold number 12 in committee, which is the adopting mayor council strategic goals, considering that Jay is not here. So that's why I asked to extend it only for 10 minutes beyond.
So you want to make a change, too?
Not yet.
Oh. Okay.
So if we hold it in committee, will Jay be back for the next committee meeting? Okay.
Not back.
I agree with the extension, though.
Yeah, I think point of order, I think we need to focus on the meeting
Yeah,
extension
just-
first and then get to the next agenda item.
Yep.
Yeah, let's vote on getting an extension, 10 minutes.
Mary Alice motioned it till 10:40 and I seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now. Next.
And point of information, can we omnibus these 6 together?
Yes, so it'll be 1 to combine them, 1 to move it forward.
Okay.
Okay. Grace?
Thank you. I did have another question for Braden. You mentioned that the 2 Habitat houses got a little more funds than what was for the others and what we had done last year per house per project because they had a higher request. I was just wondering how that fits in with the other one since the First Followers 1 project request was also much higher.
Yeah, I understand that question. So, I mean, Chad can provide more information if you're interested in kind of what needs to be done specifically to clear the trees. But in terms of the First Followers request, just the total project cost versus the funds that are given, we're actually funding them at a higher percentage per project. We try to keep it funding, we try to keep around 40% of the project total. Again, Habitat's projects are significantly more expensive because they're building single-family homes. So I believe the $30,000 for a $70,000 project is about 52%. So again, the margin's just a little bit higher. So that's kind of, I think, the reasoning that goes into that.
Thank you.
Are we ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
Okay, I would move that we omnibus resolution number 2024-02-006R, a resolution approving authorized execution of Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement with First Followers, Choteau operating plan year 2023, and resolution number 2024-02-007R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement with Habitat for Humanity of Champaign County, Choteau Developer Plan Year 2023, And resolution number 2024-02-008R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement with Habitat for Humanity for Champaign County, Choteau Operating Plan Year 2023. Resolution number 2024-02-009R, a resolution certifying a community home housing development organization for the Urbana Home Consortium with First Followers Choteau Certification 2023. And resolution number 2024-02-010R, resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement with First Followers Choteau Developer Plan Year 2023. And finally, resolution number 2024-02-011R, a resolution certifying a community housing development organization for the Urbana Home Consortium Habitat for Humanity of Champaign County, Choteau Certification Plan Year 2023 for approval on the consent agenda.
You can, it's one to
Oh, okay.
combine an
I'm
omnibus.
just putting them together now.
Yes.
Strike that last bit.
Thank you.
Second on that?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved by James and seconded by Chandra for omnibus, those resolutions. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, discussion, you need discussion. Okay, now, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that passes.
Then I would move that omnibus collection of resolutions to City Council for approval on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, and it's been moved by James and seconded by Mary Alice to move this to consent agenda for City Council. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and that's been taken care of. Thank you. Now it's time for resolution number 2024-02-013R, resolution adopting mayor council strategic goals for 2024-2025. Will.
All right, thank you. I will be very brief, since this was a lived experience for everybody here, and I'll just kind of introduce the council goals. And then
Speak into the mic, please.
Sorry. I'll just introduce the council goals real quick, and then we will, I'll leave it for you to discuss. So just kind of a brief overview of the framework that we did for our council goals is we kind of started with general areas and worked our way to specific actions. So the way this works is we have strategic areas, strategies, and then action items. The mayor council goals have a 2-year time horizon, and it's kind of trying to focus on key priorities. There's still lots of other plans that the city have with lots of goals, lots of objectives, but this is trying to narrow on something that is a bit of a stretch, but ultimately something that is hopefully achievable in the next 2 years. So we have 4 strategic areas, 12 strategies, and 30 action items. Kind of an overview of the process is there were 3 facilitated goal-setting sessions. We kept the framework and the strategic areas from the previous iteration of the mayor council goals, and the goals, and especially the action items developed, we tried to develop those with SMART principles, and that was a collaboration between the mayor, council, and the city staff present at the facilitated discussions. So our 4 strategic areas are public safety and well-being, housing, infrastructure, and economic health. And then my next 4 slides here, I'm not going to read each strategy and action item, but these are the strategies and action items that we ended up with at the end of our facilitated discussion. I will say that the wording that you saw in the resolution was probably, some of it was new. We ended with, at the facilitated discussion, the facilitator said, oh, we'll wordsmith all that. So some of this is new. So this is for everybody to review and change as you see fit, and then move for approval.
Any questions for Will? Mary Alice?
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
All right, I move that we keep in committee resolution number 2024-02-013R, resolution adopting mayor council strategic goals for 2024-2025.
Second.
Next, committee as a whole. Is that okay? well, okay, the next committee of the whole.
Oh, can I make one more suggestion?
Do you want me?
Can we make a motion to move this so with full city council attendance or something to that effect?
Is that legal?
You can also just motion to keep it in committee without setting a date specific, and we can bring it back for a meeting that we anticipate full attendance.
I
We've done
like
that
that.
before, where we've just kept it in committee until X was met, whether that was like a staff product or something else.
All right, then we'll just keep it in committee. That's the motion.
And Grace.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Oh, James.
Yeah, it was my understanding when we finished our last facilitated session that Will was going to do some wordsmithing and that we would come back and check the wordsmithing to see if it matched what we thought we heard. And I also felt like we we actually did rush through that process to get it done. And so there may have been some things left on the wayside or not fully talked out that we may want to talk a little bit more about. But it's absolutely necessary that Jaya be here for that. So I appreciate the motion to move it.
Grace.
I agree with this. I was planning to make a similar motion with the addition of a discussion at a council meeting. Since next week's doesn't work if we're not all here, but I think that would be important to have a discussion first, especially where COW meetings are a little more full of presentations. I definitely agree that we're not entirely finalized on this. I think we're close. And so I agree with keeping it in COW, and I think an added discussion before then would even be more beneficial.
Anyone else? Discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion staying in committee until further notice? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that's how it'll be. Thank you, Will. Now we have council input and communication. Anybody? I got one thing I want to say. Okay, James, go ahead.
I do want to say with the ongoing public comment, I do have a couple of resources that I'm talking to at the university who would not be facilitators, but know facilitators we might be able to approach if we want to create a discussion space in a neutral location outside of the talk at us format of city council public input. So those individuals one of them got back to me, the other one hasn't got back to me yet, but I'll share that as I get it. I do also want to mention that we had public comment about the rezoning of the property on High Cross Road. I think it's very important to note that that was rezoned previously when two of us were here, the rest of us were not, with the idea that it was going to be developed in a particular way. And I would say when a developer does not follow through on their plans, it's well within the city's rights to say, oh, what we asked for didn't come to be, so we should take it back to where it was because that didn't come forth. So I would like to talk to that individual one-on-one and have that conversation about when developers don't follow through on their commitments or their plans.
Chris.
Yeah. I just wanted to congratulate the recipients of awards at Thursday's police awards ceremony. We had a number of, there were 3 civilians that got awards and numerous officers for outstanding job. It was a very good program, and I'd like to see more of it. And it was nice to see our officers get a pat on the back for performance well done.
Anybody else? Mary Alice, take a chair for a minute.
All right, you got 1 minute, Tracy.
Okay, I got 1 minute. I got 3. I want to piggyback on what Chris just said because that was a nice ceremony, and I appreciate Chief Boone working to recognize the good works that our police officers do. The other thing I wanted to say was this morning I heard a story on WILL about first followers and home ownership. And I am 100% behind home ownership anytime that somebody can own homes. I think that it promotes good citizenship and civic duty. I think that people tend to take care of property more when they own instead of rent. And I wanted to commend First Followers. I cannot remember the gentleman's name that he was recently, and I mean within the past year, re-entered into, just being again. And his main goal was to own a home. And it was an inspiring story. And I really hope that others that go into, that are taking advantage of First Followers, follow his example, because it was just nice. I heard it twice, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name, but that's okay. But I know that right now they are in the process of using his model for home ownership to help others that are re-entering. Huh?
1040.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I just want to say that I thought that was great. And with, you say it. You go ahead.
Oh, shoot. Okay, this meeting is adjourned.